A night survey. I've been working as a land surveyor for 5 years now, mostly boring boundary disputes and construction site prep. Nothing exciting, just long days in the sun with a GPS unit and a notepad, making sure some rancher's fence line matches what the county says it should. But about 6 months ago, I took a contract that changed everything I thought I knew about working alone in the desert. I watched Sarah walk toward me from the west, calling out that she found the boundary marker. But Sarah was already standing right next to me. Let me back up. The job was straightforward enough. A property development company out of Albuquerque needed updated surveys on about 200 acres of scrubland near the Arizona-New Mexico border, right up against Navajo Nation land. The previous survey was from 1973, and with all the GPS technology we have now, they wanted modern coordinates for some commercial development they had planned. The catch was the timeline. They needed it done in 2 weeks, which meant working through the cooler parts of the day. That meant nights. My crew was small, just me, Sarah, and Tom. Sarah had been surveying almost as long as I had, sharp as hell with the GPS equipment, never missed a detail. Tom was younger, maybe 23, but he was reliable and didn't complain about the heat or the hours. We'd worked together on a dozen jobs before this one, and I trusted them both completely. The first 3 nights went fine. We'd start around 8 p.m., work until 3 or 4 in the morning, then pack up and head back to the motel and gallop. The land itself was typical high desert, sandy soil, scattered juniper and sagebrush, flat enough that you could see for miles in every direction. During the day, you'd see ravens and the occasional coyote, but at night it was dead quiet except for the wind. On the 4th night, we were set up about 3 miles from the main road, working by the light of our equipment, lamps, and headlamps. Our truck was parked maybe 200 yards back on a dirt access road, and we had our gear spread out in a rough triangle so we could take measurements from multiple points. Standard procedure. It was around 11:30 when I noticed the boot prints. I'd walked over to reposition one of the GPS receivers, and that's when I saw them in the sand. Fresh prints, maybe an hour old at most, circling our equipment in a wide loop. The thing that got my attention was the tread pattern. It wasn't like ours. We all wore standard work boots, deep lug patterns. These were smooth, almost moccasin-like, but shaped like boots. "Hey, Sarah," I called over. "You see anyone else out here tonight?" She looked up from her tablet, squinting against her headlamp. "No." "Why?" I pointed at the prints. She walked over, crouched down, and ran her light along the trail. Her face tightened. "These weren't here 20 minutes ago," she said quietly. "I walked this exact path to check the boundary flag." Tom jogged over, and we all stood there, staring at the prints. They formed a perfect circle around our gear, maybe 30 feet in diameter, then just stopped. No trail leading in, no trail leading out, just a circle. "Maybe we missed them earlier," Tom offered, but he didn't sound convinced. "Maybe," I said, but I didn't believe it either. We kept working, but the mood had shifted. Every sound seemed louder. The wind pushing through the sagebrush, the occasional crack of cooling equipment, our own footsteps. I found myself looking over my shoulder more than I should have, scanning the darkness beyond our lights. Around midnight, Tom's voice crackled over the radio. "Hey Jake, I'm heading back to the truck to grab the extra batteries." I looked up. Tom was standing 15 feet away from me, adjusting a tripod. "Tom, what are you talking about?" I said into the radio. "You're right here." Silence. Tom looked at me, confused. I didn't say anything. Sarah's voice cut in, tight with tension. I heard it too. That was Tom's voice. We all stood there, radios in hand, staring at each other. Then Tom's voice came through again, clearer this time. "I'm heading back to the truck to grab the extra batteries." The exact same words, the exact same inflection, like someone had recorded it and played it back. "Tom, I said slowly. Say something into your radio right now. He pressed the button. This is weird as hell. We all heard it clearly, his natural voice, no delay. But that other transmission, that hadn't been him. We're packing up, I said. Right now. Nobody argued. We moved fast, grabbing equipment and shoving it into cases without our usual careful organization. That's when Sarah stopped dead in her tracks. Guys, the truck. I looked up. In the distance, our truck's headlights were flashing on and off. Slow, deliberate. On, off, on, off. I reached into my pocket. The keys were right there, attached to my belt loop by a carabiner. They hadn't left my person all night. Who has the spare keys? I asked, already knowing the answer. Locked in the glove box, Sarah said. Her voice was shaking now. The lights kept flashing. On, off, on, off. Forget the gear, I said. We're leaving. Now. We started walking toward the truck, moving in a tight group, our headlamps cutting through the darkness. The flashing stopped. For a moment, I thought maybe it was some electrical short, something rational and explainable. But then I saw her. Sarah was walking toward us from the west, waving one arm, her headlamp bouncing with each step. Hey guys, I found the boundary marker, she called out. Her voice was perfect. Tone, cadence, everything. But Sarah was standing right next to me, on my left. I could hear her breathing, fast and shallow. Jake, the real Sarah whispered, that's not me. The figure kept walking toward us, getting closer. In the beam of my light, I could see the details. Same jacket, same work pants, same boots. But as she got within 30 feet, I noticed something wrong with the proportions. The arms were just a little too long, hanging past where they should have stopped. The stride was slightly off, too smooth, like someone who'd learned to walk by watching but didn't quite have the rhythm right. Come see what I found, the thing said in Sarah's voice. It's really interesting. Tom had his hand on his belt, where he kept a folding knife. That's not Sarah, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Sarah's right here. The fake Sarah stopped about 20 feet away. In the overlapping beams of our lights, I could see her face clearly now. It was Sarah's face, but the expression was wrong. The smile was too wide, held too long, and the eyes didn't blink. Come see what I found, it repeated, exact same tone. It's really interesting. Run, I said. We bolted for the truck, leaving everything behind except what we carried in our hands. I didn't look back, but I could hear footsteps behind us, keeping pace. Not running, just walking fast, steady. Those two smooth strides covering ground they shouldn't have been able to cover. Tom reached the truck first and yanked the door open. Sarah dove into the back seat, and I jumped into the driver's side, jamming the key into the ignition. The engine turned over, and I threw it into reverse, spinning us around on the dirt road. In the headlights, I saw it standing there, still wearing Sarah's face, still smiling that wrong smile. It raised one hand, not waving, just holding it up, fingers spread too wide. Then I saw what stopped it. We'd crossed over a cattle guard, one of those metal grate things set into the ground at the property line. Just beyond it, a weathered sign read, Sacred Ground, No Trespassing, in both English and what I assumed was Navajo. The thing stood on the other side of that cattle guard, not moving, just watching us drive away. We didn't stop until we hit the main highway. Even then, we sat in the gas station parking lot for an hour before anyone spoke. Tom was pale. Sarah was crying quietly, and I couldn't stop my hands from shaking. At sunrise, we drove to the county sheriff's office in Gallup and filed a report. The deputy who took our statement didn't look surprised. He wrote everything down, nodded a lot, and then said something that made my blood run cold. You're the third crew this year. Third crew for what? I asked. third survey crew to report something like this on that property. Development company keeps sending people out there. Nobody finishes the job. We never went back for the equipment. The development company threatened to sue us for breach of contract, but when we told them why we'd left, they went quiet and dropped it. A week later, I heard through another surveyor that the whole project got canceled. No explanation given. Sarah quit surveying altogether after that. Last I heard, she's working as an accountant in Denver. Tom still does the work, but he won't take any jobs near reservation land, and he won't work at night. Can't say I blame him. As for me, I still survey, but I follow new rules now. If I hear someone's voice on the radio and they're standing right next to me, we pack up immediately. If I see boot prints that don't make sense, we leave. And if I ever see someone who looks exactly like someone on my crew, but they're in two places at once, I count out loud. I count every person in my group, make them say their names, make them show me something only they would know. Because if the count comes up wrong, if there's an extra person who shouldn't be there, you don't follow them, you don't talk to them, you don't acknowledge them. You get to your vehicle, you cross whatever boundary you can find, water, pavement, a fence line, something, and you don't look back. I learned that night that some places don't want to be measured, don't want to be marked on maps, don't want to be developed, and something out there enforces that boundary. If this story resonated with you, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe, because there are more encounters like this that might just save your life one day. And remember, if you see your coworker in two places at once, count your crew out loud. And if the number's wrong, don't follow the extra one. Don't ever follow the extra one. The graveyard shift. I've worked as a security guard for 8 years, mostly overnight shifts at construction sites and warehouses. It's boring work, which is exactly how I like it. Walk the perimeter, check the locks, make sure nobody's stealing copper wire or catalytic converters. I've dealt with trespassers, drunk kids, even a few break-ins, but I'd never dealt with anything like what happened at the Red Rock Industrial Park outside Farmington, New Mexico. I heard my supervisor tell me to check the east fence line over the radio, but when I called him back on my phone, he said he'd never keyed his radio once that night. Here's what happened. I got assigned to Red Rock in late September, filling in for another guard who'd quit suddenly. The site manager didn't give me details, just said the previous guy wasn't a good fit and handed me the keys. The industrial park was about 15 years old, half the units were empty, and the occupied ones were mostly storage for oil field equipment. Lots of expensive machinery just sitting there, which meant they wanted 24-hour security. My shift was 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., 5 nights a week. The site covered maybe 40 acres, surrounded by a chain link fence with 3 vehicle gates and 1 pedestrian entrance. Standard setup. I'd drive the perimeter road every hour, check the gates, make sure all the unit doors were secure, and spend the rest of the time in the guard shack near the main entrance. The first week was completely normal. Quiet nights, no problems, barely even saw a coyote. The second week, I started noticing things. Small things at first. I'd lock a gate at midnight, come back an hour later, and it would be unlocked. Not open, just unlocked. Then I'd lock it again, and the next round, it would be fine. I figured maybe I was tired, maybe I'd forgotten to turn the key all the way, but it kept happening. Always. The same gate, the east vehicle entrance. Then I started finding boot prints in the sand near that gate. Not unusual by itself. Workers came and went during the day. Trucks made deliveries. But these prints were always fresh. Always showed up between my rounds. And they always led away from the gate into the desert, then just stopped after about 20 feet. No return trail. Just stopped. On my third week, around 2 a.m., I was sitting in the guard shack doing paperwork when my radio crackled. "Hey Michael, can you check the east fence line? I think I saw something moving out there." It was my supervisor's voice, clear as day. His name was Frank. and he usually called me around 1 a.m. to make sure everything was good, and I wouldn't hear from him again until shift change. Copy that, I said into the radio. Heading out now. I grabbed my flashlight, climbed into the company truck, and started driving toward the east fence. But something nagged at me. Frank's voice had sounded flat. No static, no background noise, just his words. Halfway to the east fence, my phone rang. Frank's number. Michael, you there? Frank's voice, slightly tinny through the phone speaker. Yeah, I'm here. Just heading to the east fence like you asked. Silence. Michael, I didn't call you on the radio. I'm calling you right now for the first time tonight. My stomach dropped. I pulled the truck over and sat there, engine idling, staring at the radio on my belt. You didn't tell me to check the east fence? I asked slowly. No, I haven't keyed the radio once tonight. Why? Did someone tell you that? Yeah, your voice over the radio. Maybe 2 minutes ago. Frank went quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice had changed, lower, more serious. Michael, I want you to go back to the guard shack right now. Don't check the fence. Just go back and lock yourself in until sunrise. Frank, what's going on? Just do it. I'll explain in the morning. He hung up. I sat there in the truck, parked on the perimeter road, looking out at the east fence line maybe 100 yards away. My headlights illuminated the chain link, the desert beyond, scattered creosote bushes making long shadows. Nothing moving, nothing visible, but I could feel it. Something out there, just past the fence, waiting. I put the truck in reverse and backed up slowly, keeping my eyes on the fence line. That's when I saw it. A figure, standing just outside the fence. Tall, wearing what looked like a security uniform. My uniform. The figure raised one hand and waved slowly, deliberately, like someone signaling a truck to back up. I couldn't see the face clearly at that distance, but the proportions were wrong. The arms were too long, hanging almost to the knees. The legs were bent backward slightly, like a dog's hind legs. The radio crackled again. Come check the fence line, Michael. I think something's wrong with it. Frank's voice. Perfect replication. I grabbed the radio, hand shaking. Who is this? No response. Just empty static. The figure by the fence started walking toward me, moving along the outside of the chain link, staying just beyond the property line. It walked wrong. Not limping, but with a gait that didn't match human mechanics. Too smooth in some places, too jerky in others. I floored it in reverse, spun the truck around, and drove back to the guard shack going 40 miles an hour on that dirt road. I locked myself inside, turned on every light, and sat there with my back against the wall, watching the windows. For the next 3 hours, I heard things outside. Footsteps on gravel, the sound of the doorknob turning slowly, testing, a soft tapping on the window, rhythmic, patient, and twice more, Frank's voice over the radio. Michael, why won't you answer? Michael, come outside so we can talk. I didn't touch that radio again. I sat there, sweating in the air-conditioned shack, watching the clock crawl toward sunrise. At 6:55 a.m., the sky started turning gray. At 7:03, Frank's truck pulled up to the guard shack. The real Frank. He got out slowly, looked around the parking area, then knocked on the door. Michael, it's me. You can open up. I looked at him through the window. Same uniform, same build, same face. But I wasn't taking chances. Tell me something only you would know. I called through the door. He sighed. Last month, you spilled coffee on the logbook and tried to dry it with the space heater. Damn near caught it on fire. I told you if it happened again, I'd make you buy a new one. That was Frank. I opened the door. He looked exhausted, like he hadn't slept. You saw it, didn't you? Saw what? I asked. though I already knew. The thing that sounds like me, the thing that tries to get guards to go to the east fence. I nodded slowly. Yeah, I saw it. Frank leaned against his truck, rubbing his face. The guard before you saw it too. Quit the next day. The one before him waited 2 weeks. I keep hoping it'll move on, but it's been here for almost 6 months now. What is it? I asked. Don't know. Don't want to know. He looked at the eastern horizon, where the sun was just starting to clear the desert. But I know it can't come past the fence line, and I know it leaves when the sun's up. That's good enough for me. Why didn't you warn me on my first day? Would you have believed me? He had a point. Look, Frank said, you did good last night. You didn't go to the fence when it called. That's the important thing. Some guards, they go. They hear their name, they hear someone they trust, and they go. Those are the ones who don't come back. Don't come back? My voice cracked. What do you mean, don't come back? Frank looked at me dead on. 4 years ago, before I started managing this site, they had a guard named Tommy Gryeyes. Worked here for 3 months. One night, someone called him on the radio, told him to check the east fence. He went. They found his truck there the next morning. Door open, engine running, radio on the seat. Never found Tommy. I quit that night. Didn't even finish the shift. I told Frank I'd work until he found a replacement, but only during daylight hours. He understood. They hired a new guy 2 weeks later, some young kid who needed the money. Frank told him the same thing he told every guard. Don't answer the radio if something feels wrong. Don't go to the east fence after dark, and if you see someone who looks like someone you know but something's off, don't follow them. The kid lasted 5 days before he quit too. As far as I know, they still have trouble keeping security at Red Rock Industrial Park. They've tried everything. Motion sensors, cameras, even had a Navajo medicine man come bless the property. Nothing works. That thing still shows up after dark, still walks the fence line, still calls to guards and voices they trust. I work days now. Nice office building in Albuquerque, climate controlled, fluorescent lights, normal people doing normal work. I don't miss the overnight shift at all. But I'll tell you what I learned out there in the desert. What might save your life if you work security or spend time alone at night in remote places. If someone calls you on the radio and tells you to go somewhere isolated, verify it with a phone call. Make them tell you something only they would know. Make them prove they're real. Because if you can't verify it, don't go. And if you see someone outside your vehicle you're building at night, someone who looks like someone you know, but the proportions are wrong, the movements are wrong, the voice is just slightly off, don't open the door. Don't acknowledge them, and don't follow them. Because some things out there have learned to wear familiar faces. They've learned our voices, our mannerisms, our habits. They know exactly what to say to make us trust them, to make us follow them into the darkness. And once you follow them past that fence line, past that boundary, they can't cross themselves. Nobody's coming to bring you back. If this story made you think twice about working alone at night, go ahead and drop a like and subscribe, because these encounters happen more often than you'd think. Stay safe out there, and remember, always verify the long haul. I've been a long haul trucker for 12 years now, running routes from Texas to Nevada and back, mostly carrying construction materials and drilling equipment for the oil fields. It's lonely work, but I like it that way. No boss breathing down your neck, no coworkers to deal with, just you, the road, and whatever podcast or audiobook keeps you company through the night. I've seen plenty of weird things on those highways, drunk drivers, bizarre accidents, strange lights in the sky, but nothing prepared me for what I encountered on Highway 60 between Magdalena and Detil, New Mexico. I saw someone standing in the middle of the highway, waving me down, but when I got within 50 feet, they were suddenly on the shoulder, and when I looked in my mirror, they were running behind my truck on all fours. Let me set this up properly. It was early November, around 3 a.m., and I was hauling a full load of steel I-beams from Midland to a construction site outside of Reno. I'd been driving for about 6 hours, and I was starting to feel that late night fatigue creeping in, so I'd planned to stop at a truck stop and daddle for coffee and a quick power nap. Highway 60, through that stretch, is empty at night. No traffic, no lights, just sage, desert, and darkness on both sides of the road. The moon was almost full that night, bright enough that I could see the landscape pretty clearly without my high beams. The highway rolled through gentle hills, and every so often I'd see the eyes of a deer or coyote reflecting my lights from the shoulder. I had the CB radio on, monitoring channel 19 like always, but it had been silent for the last hour. Not even static, just dead air, which was unusual but not unheard of in that remote stretch. That's when I saw the person. They were standing right in the center of my lane, maybe 300 yards ahead, arms raised above their head, waving them back and forth like they desperately needed help. My first thought was breakdown. Someone's car died. They need a jump or a phone to call for a tow. I started slowing down, tapping my brakes, downshifting. The figure kept waving, kept standing right there in the middle of the lane. As I got closer, I could make out more details. Tall person, maybe 6 feet, wearing dark clothes that looked like a hoodie and jeans, but something felt wrong about the proportions. The arms seemed too long, and the waving motion was too smooth, too rhythmic, like a metronome. When I was about 50 feet away, going maybe 20 miles an hour now, I blinked. In that fraction of a second, the figure was no longer in the middle of the highway. It was standing on the shoulder, 20 feet to my right, perfectly still, watching my truck pass. I hit the brakes hard, air brakes hissing, the whole rig shuddering as I brought it to a stop. In my passenger side mirror, I could see the figure standing there on the shoulder, not moving, just facing my direction. The moon was bright enough that I should have been able to see their face clearly, but I couldn't. It was like looking at a shadow shaped like a person, but with no features, just darkness where a face should be. My CB radio crackled suddenly, making me jump. "You got a problem there, driver?" The voice was male, generic, sounded like it could have been any trucker on the channel. I grabbed the mic, my hand shaking slightly. "Yeah, somebody flagged me down. Thought they needed help." Static. Then nothing. The radio went dead again, that same unsettling silence. I looked in my mirror again. The figure was gone. Just empty shoulder, empty highway, nothing but sagebrush and moonlight. "Hello?" I said into the CB. "Anybody else on this stretch see someone walking on 60? Nothing but that dead silence. I sat there for a long moment, engine idling, every instinct telling me to just drive away. But what if someone really did need help? What if their car was broken down somewhere in the dark and I'd just left them stranded? I've helped dozens of stranded motorists over the years. Jump starts, tire changes, even gave a family a ride to the next town once when their radiator blew. It's part of the code out here. We help people when they're in trouble. I put on my hazard lights, grabbed my heavy-duty flashlight, and climbed down from the cab. The night air was cold, probably low 40s, and completely still. No wind at all, which was unusual for that stretch. I could hear my own breathing, the tick of the cooling engine, the faint hum of my hazard lights, nothing else, not even insects. The silence felt thick, oppressive, like something was absorbing all sound. I walked back along the shoulder, sweeping my flashlight beam across the pavement and the scrub brush beyond. My boots crunched on gravel, each step echoing louder than it should have in that dead air. "Hey," I called out. "Need help? I saw you waving." No response. I walked about 50 yards back from where I'd parked, scanning both sides of the road. No broken down vehicle, no person, no tire tracks in the soft dirt of the shoulder. Nothing. like the figure had just vanished into thin air. That's when I noticed the prints. They were in a patch of soft sand just off the pavement, illuminated by my flashlight beam. Footprints, but wrong. They started as boot prints, normal human sized, but after 3 or 4 steps, they changed. The prints became larger, more elongated, with what looked like claw marks at the front, and the stride. The stride was too long, maybe 6 feet between prints, like whatever made them was either running or walking with impossibly long legs. The prints led away from the highway into the desert, heading north toward a rocky outcropping maybe 100 yards out. I stood there, following the trail with my light, and that's when I saw the eyes. 2 yellow-green points of light, reflecting my flashlight beam from near those rocks. Too high off the ground to be a coyote, too far apart to be a deer. They didn't blink, just stared, fixed on me. My blood went cold. I started backing toward my truck, keeping my light aimed at those eyes, not turning my back. The eyes didn't move, didn't blink, just watched. When I was about 20 feet from my truck, I heard it. A voice. My voice. "You got a problem there, driver?" The exact words from the CB, in my exact tone and inflection, coming from the direction of those eyes. I broke into a run, reached my truck, and hauled myself up into the cab. I slammed the door, hit the locks, and just sat there, breathing hard, staring out at the desert through my windshield. The eyes were gone. For a moment, I thought about just staying put, waiting until sunrise, calling for help on my phone, but when I checked, I had no signal. Not unusual out here, but it meant I was on my own. I put the truck in gear, released the air brakes, and started rolling forward, slowly at first, then building speed. I kept checking my mirrors, watching for any sign of movement on the road behind me. That's when I saw it in my passenger side mirror, something running behind my truck, keeping pace. It was on all fours, moving with a loping gait that covered ground impossibly fast. In the red glow of my taillights, I could see the shape, roughly human-sized, but moving like an animal, with limbs that bent wrong and a head that seemed too large for its body. I pushed the accelerator down, building speed, 30 miles an hour, 40, 50. The thing kept pace, staying about 20 yards behind my trailer, running in the middle of the highway. 60 miles an hour, 70. It was still there. My hands were white-knuckled on the steering wheel, my heart hammering so hard I could feel it in my throat. The highway stretched out in front of me, empty and straight, and I kept my foot down, pushing the rig as fast as I dared with a full load on these winding mountain roads. At 80 miles an hour, I hit a straight stretch, and I looked in my mirror again. The thing was closer now, maybe 10 yards behind my trailer. In the better light, I could see more details. It had the rough shape of a human, but the proportions were all wrong. 2 long arms that almost reached the pavement as it ran, legs that bent backward like a dog's, and a head that swiveled unnaturally, looking up at my mirrors like it knew I was watching. Then it opened its mouth. Even over the roar of my engine and the wind, I could hear it, a sound that started as a howl but shifted, changed, became something that sounded like laughter. Human laughter, but wrong, distorted, like it was being played through a broken speaker. I saw a green highway sign flash past. Daddle, 5 miles. I kept my foot down, praying the rig wouldn't jackknife on these curves, praying I'd make it to town, to lights, to people. The thing behind me kept running, kept laughing, that awful sound cutting through the night. 4 miles, 3 miles, 2 miles. I could see lights ahead now, the glow of the truck stop at the Datil exit, sodium vapor lamps casting orange light over the parking lot, the bright fluorescence of the convenience store, beautiful artificial light that meant civilization and safety. 1 mile. I started slowing down, preparing for the exit ramp, and I looked in my mirror one last time. The thing was gone. The highway behind me was empty, just dark pavement and painted lines disappearing into the night. I took the exit at 40 miles an hour, probably way too fast, and pulled into the truck stop parking lot. I found a spot under one of the brightest lights, set my air brakes, and just sat there, hands still shaking, trying to process what had just happened. The truck stop was almost empty, just two other rigs parked at the far end of the lot, their cabs dark, drivers probably sleeping. The convenience store was open, and through the windows I could see a clerk behind the counter reading something on his phone, completely normal and mundane. I climbed down from my cab, my legs unsteady, and walked into the store. The bell above the door chimed, and the clerk looked up. He was an older guy, maybe 60, with gray hair and weathered skin that said he'd spent most of his life in the desert sun. "Coffee's fresh," he said, nodding toward the machines along the wall. I poured myself a cup, my hand still trembling enough that some of it sloshed over the rim. The clerk noticed. "You okay, friend? Look like you've seen a ghost." I almost laughed at that. Something like that. You ever have drivers come in here talking about weird things on the highway? His expression changed, not surprised, more like resigned. 60 between here and Magdalena? Yeah, he nodded slowly. Every few months, someone comes in looking like you do right now. Shaking, pale, can't quite explain what they saw. Most of them just get their coffee, sit for a while, then head out without saying much. What about the ones who do talk? I asked. They all say pretty much the same thing. Something in the road that shouldn't be there, something that moves wrong, something that follows them. He paused, studying me. The thing that gets me is they're always reliable folks, professional drivers, cops, rangers. Not the type to spook easy or make things up. You ever see anything yourself? Me? Nah, I don't drive that stretch at night anymore. Haven't for years. He leaned on the counter. There's a Navajo elder who comes through here sometimes, picks up supplies for his community up in the hills. Last time I mentioned the stories, he just nodded like it wasn't news to him at all. Said some things, hunt that stretch of highway, things that used to hunt the old trails before the road was there. Said they don't like vehicles, engines, artificial light, but they'll follow them, test them, see if they can lure the driver out into the dark. Did he say what they are? The clerk shrugged. He used a word I didn't know. Sounded like Yi Nao Lushi or something close to that. When I asked him what it meant, he just said, "Don't talk about them at night," and changed the subject. I knew that word. I'd heard it before from another driver who'd spent time working on the reservation. The Skinwalker. The kind of thing you're not supposed to name, not supposed to talk about, not supposed to acknowledge. The elder say anything else? I asked. Just one thing. He said, if something ever follows you on that highway, don't stop, don't go back, don't try to help. Just get to lights, get to people, get to pavement and civilization. He said they can't cross certain boundaries. Running water, town limits, sacred ground. Said as long as you keep moving toward the light, they'll eventually give up. I finished my coffee, bought 3 more cups to go, and thanked the clerk. I sat in my truck for another hour, watching the parking lot, watching the highway, waiting for my nerves to settle. The sun started to rise around 6 a.m., painting the desert in shades of orange and red, and only then did I feel safe enough to keep driving. I made it to Reno, delivered my load, and took 3 days off before accepting another run. When I did go back out, I requested routes that didn't take me through that stretch of Highway 60 at night. My dispatcher asked why, and I just told him I wanted to try some different roads for a while. He didn't push it. I've talked to other drivers since then, casually bringing up strange experiences on remote highways. You'd be surprised how many have stories similar to mine. Most don't want to talk about it in detail, don't want to sound crazy, but you can see it in their eyes. They've seen something out there, something that shouldn't exist but does. One driver told me he saw something pacing his truck on Interstate 40 near Holbrook, running alongside at 70 miles an hour, keeping perfect pace for almost 10 miles before it veered off into the desert. Another said she picked up a hitchhiker outside of Gallup who asked too many questions, moved too smoothly, and had eyes that reflected her dome light like an animal's. She said when she pulled into a rest stop and turned to tell him they'd arrived, he was gone. Just gone. The passenger door was still locked from the inside. I still drive long haul. I still run routes through New Mexico and Arizona, but I follow new rules now. Rules that might sound paranoid to someone who hasn't been out there at night. Alone. On those empty highways where the desert stretches for miles in every direction. If I see someone standing in the road at night, I slow down, but I don't stop. I report it on the CB, give the location, and keep moving. If something seems wrong about a person, proportions off, movements too smooth or too jerky, face hidden or unclear, I don't engage. I don't make eye contact. I keep driving. If I hear my own voice, or any voice, coming from somewhere it shouldn't, the CB, the side of the road, the darkness outside my windows, I ignore it. I turn on my radio, I focus on the road, and I head for the nearest town. And most importantly, if something follows me, I don't stop. I don't go back to check. I don't try to figure out what it is. I just keep moving toward artificial light, toward people, toward civilization, until whatever's behind me gives up and returns to whatever darkness it came from. Because out there, on those lonely highways, in the hours between midnight and dawn, there are things that hunt, things that test you, things that want to see if they can lure you off the pavement, away from your vehicle, away from the protection of steel and light and motion. And if you stop, if you go back, if you follow them into that darkness, you might not come back. If this story made you think twice about pulling over for strangers at night, hit that subscribe button and drop a like, because these roads are lonelier and more dangerous than most people realize. Stay moving, stay in the light, and remember, if something on the highway doesn't feel right, trust your gut and keep driving. Don't ever stop for something that moves wrong. The night shift. I worked a graveyard shift at a gas station outside Shiprock, New Mexico for 2 summers while I was in college. It wasn't glamorous work, but it paid decent, and I could study during the slow hours between midnight and 6 a.m. Most nights, I'd see maybe 10 customers total. Truckers, shift workers, the occasional insomniac buying energy drinks and beef jerky. I thought I'd seen every type of late-night customer there was. I was wrong. The woman walked in at 3:17 a.m. asking for the bathroom key, but I'd watched her car pull up to pump 4, and she'd never gotten out. Let me explain how it started. It was mid-July, stupid hot even at night, the kind of heat that makes the pavement shimmer and the air taste like dust. The gas station sat at a lonely crossroads about 8 miles outside of town, surrounded by nothing but desert scrub and the occasional mesa rising up in the distance. We got steady business during the day, but nights were dead. Just me, the fluorescent lights humming overhead, and whatever podcast I could stream on the shaky Wi-Fi. That night, I was working on a paper for my geology class, something about sedimentary rock formations in the Four Corners region. Boring stuff, but it beat staring at the empty parking lot. Around 3 a.m., I noticed headlights coming from the south, moving slow. The car pulled up to pump 4, a beat-up sedan, maybe a Honda or Toyota, hard to tell in the sodium vapor lighting. I watched on the security monitor behind the counter, waiting to see if they'd prepay or just pump and run. People tried that sometimes, thinking we wouldn't chase them at 3 in the morning. They were usually right. The car sat there, engine idling, for maybe 2 full minutes. Nobody got out. I could see the silhouette of someone in the driver's seat, but they weren't moving, just sitting there. I figured they were on their phone. or maybe having second thoughts about whatever late night road trip they were on. Then the door to the store opened, and a woman walked in. She was maybe 30, 35, wearing a faded denim jacket and jeans, dark hair pulled back in a ponytail. Normal looking, nothing obviously wrong, but something about her made the hair on my arm stand up. Maybe it was the way she walked, too smooth, like she was gliding instead of stepping. Or maybe it was her expression, completely blank, no emotion at all, just staring straight ahead as she approached the counter. "Bathroom key," she said. Not a question, not a request, just a statement. I grabbed the key from the hook behind me, attached to a big wooden paddle so people wouldn't forget to return it. "It's around the side of the building," I said, holding it out. She took the key, her fingers brushing mine for just a second. They were ice cold, despite the heat. She turned and walked toward the door, still with that too smooth gait, and I watched her disappear around the corner of the building. That's when I looked at the security monitor. The car at pump 4 was still there, engine still running, and I could still see the silhouette in the driver's seat, still sitting there, still not moving. My stomach dropped. I pulled up the camera angle for the side of the building where the bathrooms were. The woman was standing in front of the door, key in hand, but she wasn't unlocking it. She was just standing there, facing the door, not moving at all, like she'd forgotten what she was supposed to do next. I watched for maybe 30 seconds. She didn't move, didn't shift her weight, didn't try the key, nothing. Just stood there like a mannequin. Then she turned and looked directly at the camera. Even on the grainy security feed, I could see her face clearly. The blank expression was gone. Now she was smiling, this wide, too wide smile that showed too many teeth. And her eyes caught the light wrong, reflecting like an animal's, bright and yellow-green. I took a step back from the monitor, my heart suddenly pounding. This wasn't right. None of this was right. The woman on the camera turned away from the lens and walked back toward the front of the building, still with that gliding motion. I looked at the front door, waiting for her to come in, to return the key, to do something normal that would explain away the sick feeling in my gut. She didn't come in. I checked the monitor again. She was standing just outside the front door, visible through the glass, holding the bathroom key, standing perfectly still, that same too wide smile on her face. "Can I help you with something?" I called out, my voice cracking slightly. She didn't respond, didn't move, just stood there, smiling, staring through the glass at me. I looked at the pump 4 camera again. The car was still there. The silhouette was still in the driver's seat. Two of them. There were two of them. Or, no, wait. I pulled up the timestamp on the camera feed, scrubbed back to when the car first pulled up. I watched the car arrive, watched it sit there with the engine running, watched the driver's seat, waiting to see when the woman got out. She never did. The driver's seat never moved. Nobody opened the door. Nobody got out. But 3 minutes after the car arrived, the front door of my store opened, and the woman walked in. I felt my hands start shaking. The woman outside pressed her palm against the glass door, still smiling. I could see her hand clearly. Normal, at first glance, but the fingers were too long, the joints bending in places they shouldn't. She tapped once, twice, 3 times, a slow, deliberate rhythm. Then she spoke, her voice muffled by the glass, but still clear enough to understand. "Can I come in?" Every instinct in my body screamed, "No, don't invite her in. Don't open that door. Don't acknowledge her. Store's open," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Door's unlocked. Can I come in?" She repeated. Same exact tone, same inflection, like a recording. "Door's unlocked," I said again. She tilted her head, that smile never changing, and tapped on the glass again. 3 slow taps. That's when I noticed she wasn't casting a reflection in the glass. The fluorescent lights inside the store were bright enough that I should have been able to see her reflection in the door, but there was nothing. Just the glass, the darkness beyond, and her hand pressed against it. Can I come in? I grabbed my phone from my pocket, hand shaking so hard I almost dropped it. No signal. Not unusual out here, but right now, it felt like the universe was abandoning me. The landline. The store had a landline for emergencies. I picked up the receiver, keeping my eyes on the woman at the door. Dial tone. Thank God. I punched in 911, and after 3 rings, a dispatcher answered. 911, what's your emergency? I'm at the quick stop on Highway 64, about 8 miles south of Shiprock. There's someone outside the store, and I think something's wrong with them. Wrong how, sir? How could I explain? They're not moving right. They're asking to come in, but won't open the door. And there's a car at the pump that's been running for 10 minutes, with someone still inside it. Is the person outside threatening you? Not exactly, but something's wrong. Really wrong. Okay, I'm sending a unit out to you. Should be there in about 15 minutes. Stay inside, keep the doors locked if you feel unsafe. The door doesn't lock from the inside, it's a gas station. Silence on the other end. Then stay behind the counter. If they come in and try to harm you, get to the back room and barricade yourself. Units on the way. She stayed on the line with me, asking questions to keep me calm, but I barely heard them. I was watching the woman at the door. She'd stopped smiling. Now her face was blank again, expressionless, and she was slowly dragging her hand down the glass, leaving no streak, no fingerprints, nothing. Can I come in? She asked again. Why won't you just open the door? I said, not to her, but to myself, trying to understand. The dispatcher heard me. The person's asking to come in? Yeah, over and over. But the door's unlocked. She could just walk in. The dispatcher went quiet for a moment. Then, carefully, what tribe land are you near? Navajo Nation border is about 2 miles west. Why? Another pause. The officer I'm sending, he's Navajo. He'll know what to do when he gets there. But listen to me very carefully. Do not, under any circumstances, tell that person they can come in. Don't give them permission. You understand? My mouth went dry. What is she? Just don't give permission. Officer's 8 minutes out. The woman at the door stepped back, her movements suddenly jerky, mechanical. She looked at the bathroom key still in her hand, then threw it. Hard. It hit the glass door with enough force to crack it, a spiderweb fracture spreading across the surface. Then she turned and walked toward the car at pump 4. That gliding motion again. I watched on the monitor as she approached the driver's side door, opened it, and climbed in. But the silhouette never moved, never shifted to accommodate her. The driver's seat looked exactly the same as it had for the last 10 minutes, like nobody was sitting there at all. The car pulled away from the pump, no headlights, and drove slowly across the parking lot toward the highway. It didn't accelerate, didn't turn on its lights, just rolled onto the pavement and disappeared into the darkness heading north. I stood there, shaking, watching the empty parking lot, waiting for something else to happen. 6 minutes later, headlights appeared from the south. A Navajo Nation police unit pulled into the lot, and an officer got out. Older guy, maybe 50, with gray in his hair and a face that had seen too much. He looked around the parking lot, looked at the cracked front door, then came inside. You the one who called? He asked. I nodded, not trusting my voice. He looked at me for a long moment, then at the cracked door, then back at me. You invite her in? No, she kept asking, but I didn't. The dispatcher told me not to. He let out a long breath. Good, that's good. He walked over to the door, examined the crack, then looked at where the bathroom key had fallen on the ground outside. She touch you? Just her fingers. when I handed her the key. Wash your hands. Soap and water. Hot as you can stand. Do it now. I went to the bathroom, scrubbed my hands until they were red and raw, used half a bottle of soap. When I came back out, the officer was watching something on the security monitor. You got footage from tonight, he asked. I nodded and showed him how to rewind it. He watched the whole sequence. The car pulling up, the woman walking in, her standing outside, the car leaving. He watched it twice, his expression never changing. This happened before? He asked finally. No, never. I've worked here for 2 summers, and nothing like this. But you felt watched, haven't you? Noticed things moved when you didn't move them. Heard sounds outside when nobody's there. I had. Small things. Things I'd chalked up to being tired, being alone, letting my imagination run. Equipment falling off shelves. The door chime ringing when nobody came in. Footsteps on the roof when there were no trees, no animals, nothing that could explain them. Yeah, I admitted. Sometimes. He nodded. This place sits on what used to be a trading route. Long time ago. Before the highways, before the reservation boundaries, people used to travel through here. Some of them. Some of them weren't people. Not anymore. They gave up their humanity for power, for the ability to change their shape, to hunt. They still use the old routes, even when roads get built over them. What did she want, I asked. To be invited in. Some of them, the old rules still bind them. They can't cross certain thresholds without permission. A home, a church, sometimes a business. The door being unlocked doesn't matter. They need to be invited. He looked at me. If you'd said yes, if you told her to come in, you would have given her permission to do whatever she wanted. To you, to this place, to anyone who came in after. The car, there was someone in the car, but she got in, and there was nobody in that car. That's the shape she wears sometimes. Makes people think she's normal, just another traveler. But you noticed, you saw she never got out, and that made her change tactics. Probably made her angry too, which is why she broke her door. He pulled out a business card and handed it to me. You work tomorrow night? Yeah. Call in sick. Call in sick for the rest of the week. I'm gonna talk to your manager, have them shut down the overnight shifts for a while, say there's maintenance issues. You shouldn't be here alone anymore. Not for a few months at least. What if she comes back? She will. They always come back, test the boundary again. But she knows now that you know what she is. That makes you dangerous to her. She'll probably try again with whoever works here next, but he paused. I'll make sure nobody works here alone at night. At least 2 people. Always. He walked me to my car, watched me get in, told me to drive straight home and not stop for anything or anyone. I did exactly that, going 70 miles an hour through the dark desert, checking my rearview mirror every few seconds, convinced I'd see headlights following me. I didn't. I called in sick the next day and the day after that. On the 3rd day, my manager called and said the overnight shift was being eliminated, that they were closing from midnight to 6 a.m. until further notice. She didn't say why, and I didn't ask. I finished that summer working day shifts, and when I went back to college in August, I changed my major from geology to computer science, something that would keep me in cities, in buildings with other people, somewhere I'd never have to work alone at night, in the middle of nowhere. I've never gone back to that gas station. I've never driven past it, even during the day. I don't know if they ever reopened the overnight shifts, and I don't want to know. But I'll tell you what I learned that night, and it might save your life if you ever work alone in a remote place after dark. If someone asks to come in, and they ask more than once, pay attention to why they're asking. A normal person would just open the door. They wouldn't need permission. If someone appears without you seeing where they came from, trust your instincts. Check the cameras, check the parking lot, verify that what you're seeing makes sense. And if something feels wrong, if your body is screaming at you that danger is near, listen to it. Don't rationalize it away. Don't convince yourself you're being paranoid. Call for help, stay in the light, don't give permission for anything to cross your threshold, and wait for someone who knows what they're dealing with. Because some things out there know the rules better than we do. They know the words we use, the gestures we make, the social contracts we follow, and they'll exploit those rules, twist them, use them to get what they want. But if you know the rules too, if you refuse to play their game, they can't touch you. If this story made you grateful you don't work overnight shifts, hit that like button and subscribe, because there are more stories like this, more warnings that might just keep you safe. Stay aware out there, and remember, never invite in something that asks too many times. The field work. I'm a geologist. Been doing field work for about 7 years now, mostly in the Southwest, doing soil surveys and rock sample collection for mining companies. It's solitary work, which suits me fine. You spend your days hiking remote areas with a GPS unit, a rock hammer, and sample bags, mapping out mineral deposits and geological formations. Most of the time, the biggest danger is heat exhaustion or maybe a rattlesnake. Most of the time. I was collecting samples near an old canyon in northern Arizona when I heard my own voice calling to me from the ridge above, but I was standing alone in the canyon bottom. Let me back up and explain the whole situation. It was late September, perfect weather for field work, mid-70s during the day, cool at night. I was contracted to do a mineral survey on about 40 square miles of BLM land northeast of Tuba City, looking for copper and uranium deposits. The area was mostly canyon country, sedimentary rock layers exposed in these beautiful striations of red, orange, and white. Isolated as hell, no cell service. Nearest paved road was about 12 miles out. I'd set up a base camp near a seasonal creek bed, just my tent, a folding table for samples, and my truck parked under a scraggly juniper for shade. Standard protocol for solo field work. I'd hike out each day with my gear, collect samples, mark coordinates, take photos, and come back before dark. The first 2 days went exactly as planned. I mapped the southern section of my survey area, collected about 30 samples, saw nothing but lizards and ravens. On the third day, I decided to work the northern canyons, an area I hadn't explored yet. I hiked in around 7 a.m., following a dry wash that cut between two mesa formations. The rock walls rose maybe 200 feet on either side, and the wash bottom was sandy, easy walking. I was looking for exposed volcanic intrusions, places where magma had pushed up through the sedimentary layers millions of years ago. Those intrusions sometimes carried the minerals I was looking for. Around 10 a.m., I found a promising outcrop on the eastern wall, about 30 feet up from the wash bottom. I climbed up, carefully, testing each handhold. The rock face was solid, and when I reached the outcrop, I could see what I was hoping for. Dark basalt cutting through the lighter sandstone, crystalline structures visible in the surface. I was chipping samples, focused on my work, when I heard it. Hey, down here. My own voice. My exact voice, calling from the wash below. I looked down, my hammer frozen mid-swing. The wash was empty. Nobody there. Just sand and scattered rocks and the shadows of the canyon walls. Hello? I called out. Silence. Just the faint wind moving through the canyon, that hollow sound you get in narrow spaces. I told myself I had imagined it. Heat playing tricks. Or maybe an echo of my own breathing. My mind filling in words that weren't there. I went back to work, chipped 3 more samples, bagged them, marked the GPS coordinates. Hey, down here, I found something. Same voice, same tone. This time it was clearer, and it was coming from further down the wash, maybe 100 yards north. around a bend I couldn't see from my position. My skin prickled. That wasn't an echo. That wasn't my imagination. That was my voice, speaking words I hadn't said, coming from a place I wasn't standing. I climbed down from the outcrop, slower than I'd climbed up, my hands suddenly shaking. When I reached the wash bottom, I stood there, listening. The canyon was completely quiet now. No birds, no insects, not even wind, just that thick, oppressive silence that feels wrong. I should have left right then. Every instinct said turn around, hike back to camp, get in the truck. But part of me, the rational geologist part, needed an explanation. Maybe there was another hiker in the canyon, someone whose voice just happened to sound like mine in the acoustics of this place. Maybe it was some weird echo effect I didn't understand. I started walking north, following the wash, my boots crunching on sand. I kept my rock hammer in my hand, held like a weapon instead of a tool. The wash curved left, and I moved slowly around the bend, staying close to the western wall. The canyon opened up into a wider area, maybe 50 feet across, where three smaller washes converged. And standing in the center of that junction was a person. He had his back to me, wearing clothes almost identical to mine. Khaki field pants, a faded blue work shirt, a broad-brimmed hiking hat. Same build, same height. He was standing perfectly still, looking up at the canyon rim. "Hey," I called out, my voice sounding too loud in that dead silence. The figure didn't turn, didn't acknowledge me, just kept standing there, motionless. "Hey, you alright?" I took a few steps closer. That's when I noticed the shadow was wrong. The sun was almost directly overhead, just past its zenith. My shadow pooled at my feet, short and dark. But this person's shadow stretched out to the east, long and thin, like the sun was setting instead of at midday. I stopped walking. The figure finally moved, turning slowly to face me, and my breath caught in my throat. It was me. My face, my features, even a scar on my left cheek from a climbing accident 2 years ago. But the expression was wrong, frozen in a smile that was too wide and too empty. And the eyes didn't blink, just stared with an intensity that made my stomach turn. "I found something," it said in my voice. "Come look." I took a step back, then another. The thing wearing my face tilted its head, and I heard a crack like joints popping, but wrong, too loud. The smile never changed. "Come look," it repeated, extending one arm toward a gap between the rock walls, a narrow side canyon I hadn't noticed before. It's really interesting. The extended arm was too long, subtly, but enough to notice once I was looking for it. The fingers didn't quite match the proportions they should have. "Who are you?" I managed to say, my voice barely above a whisper. It didn't answer, just kept smiling that empty smile, arms still extended, pointing at the side canyon. I started backing up, keeping my eyes on the thing, not turning around. My mind was racing, trying to find a rational explanation, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. Hallucination, heat stroke, dehydration, had to be something. But I knew, deep down, I knew this wasn't any of those things. The figure took a step toward me, and I heard that cracking sound again, like its legs weren't bending at the right joints. It moved smoothly despite that, closing the distance between us faster than walking should allow. I turned and ran. My boots slipped on loose sand, and I almost went down, caught myself against the canyon wall, kept running. Behind me, I could hear footsteps, but they were wrong. Not the rhythm of running feet, more like something hitting the ground in pairs, like it was using 4 limbs instead of 2. The wash curved right, and I followed it, not looking back, my lungs burning, my pack bouncing painfully against my spine. The sound behind me kept pace, sometimes closer, sometimes further away, but never stopping. I saw my outcrop ahead, the place where I'd been collecting samples, and I pushed harder, my legs screaming. Just beyond that was the path back to camp, maybe 2 miles of exposed wash, but it led to my truck to escape. The footsteps behind me stopped. I risked a glance over my shoulder. The wash behind me was empty. Nothing. No figure, no movement, just sunlight, shadow, red rock. I didn't stop running until I reached my truck. I threw my pack in the bed, climbed into the cab, locked the doors. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely get the key in the ignition. The engine started, and I've never been so grateful for a mechanical sound in my life. I looked out at my camp. The tent was collapsed, the support poles scattered. My sample table was overturned. Bags of rocks spread across the ground. The folding chair I had left set up was now in a tree, wedged in branches 15 feet off the ground. I didn't get out to investigate. I didn't try to salvage anything. I put the truck in gear and drove, following my tire tracks back to the access road, then the dirt road, then finally pavement. I didn't stop until I reached Tuba City, pulled into the first gas station I saw, and sat there in the parking lot, trying to stop shaking. I called my supervisor from a payphone, told him I'd had an equipment failure, that I needed to abort the survey. He wasn't happy, asked what happened to the samples I'd already collected. I told him they were lost, which was true. He asked if I could go back and recover them. I said no. He asked why not, and I couldn't answer. What was I supposed to say? That something wearing my face tried to lure me into a side canyon? That something destroyed my camp while I was running for my life? That I heard my own voice calling to me from places I wasn't standing? I ended up quitting that contract, took a penalty for breaking it early, lost about 3 weeks of pay. Didn't care. I've never gone back to that area, never accepted another solo survey job in that part of Arizona. I talked to another geologist a few months later, a guy who had been working in the Southwest for 20 years. I didn't tell him the whole story, just asked if he'd ever experienced anything strange during fieldwork. He got quiet, looked at me for a long moment, then asked where I'd been working. When I told him the area northeast of Tuba City, he nodded slowly. Yeah, he said. I know that country. Did solo work there back in '98. Lasted 4 days before I packed up and left. What happened? I asked. Something pretending to be my field partner kept showing up. Thing was, my field partner was back in Flagstaff. I was working alone. He paused. It knew things it shouldn't have known. Personal things, conversations we'd had, jokes between us, but it couldn't quite get his walk right, and it kept asking me to follow it to places I'd marked as unsafe on my maps. Did you follow it? Hell no. After the second time I saw it, I was out of there, left half my equipment behind. He looked at me seriously. Whatever's out there in those canyons, it's been there a long time. Longer than the mining surveys, longer than the roads. Local folks from the nation, they know about it. They stay away from certain areas. We should too. I asked him what he thought it was, but he just shook his head, said, some things don't have names. You should speak out loud, and knowing what something is doesn't help you if you're alone with it in a remote canyon. I took his advice. I still do geological field work, but now I only take jobs where I'm part of a team, never solo, and I stay away from that part of Arizona entirely. When clients ask why I won't work certain areas, I tell them I'm not familiar with the formations there, which is technically true, because I learned something in that canyon, something that changed how I think about field work in remote places. If you're alone in the desert and you hear your own voice calling to you, don't follow it. Don't try to rationalize it. Don't convince yourself it's an echo or your imagination. Just leave. Immediately. Get back to your vehicle. Get back to roads and people and civilization. And if you see something wearing your face and your clothes and using your voice, don't try to communicate with it. Don't try to understand what it is or what it wants. Just run. because some places in the desert have things living in them that humans weren't meant to meet, things that have learned to look like us, sound like us, act like us, things that use that resemblance to lure people away from safety into narrow canyons and dead-end washes where nobody will find you. Things that have been doing this long before we ever started exploring these remote areas with our GPS units and rock hammers and scientific curiosity. I was lucky. I didn't follow it into that side canyon. I didn't let my curiosity override my instincts. Some people aren't that lucky. If this story made you reconsider solo hiking in remote areas, hit that subscribe button and drop a like, because staying safe out there means knowing when to trust your instincts over your curiosity. And remember, if you hear your own voice calling from somewhere, you're not standing. Don't answer. Don't ever answer. Summer break. I'm a college student, junior year at University of New Mexico, and last summer I took a job as a camp counselor at a youth camp near the Manzano Mountains. Easy money, I thought. Babysit some kids, do some arts and crafts, make enough to cover textbooks for fall semester. I figured the hardest part would be homesickness and scraped knees. I was so wrong. 3 kids said they saw their parents standing at the edge of the woods waving at them, but visiting day wasn't for another 2 weeks, and when we did a head count, all the kids were accounted for. Let me set this up from the beginning. Camp Pinewood was one of those old school summer camps, been around since the 60s. Cabins instead of tents, mess hall with a stone fireplace, the whole nostalgic experience. About 60 kids per session, ages 8 to 14, 2-week programs running June through August. I was assigned to Cabin 7, 8 boys all around 10 years old, with another counselor named Brian who was a year older than me. The camp sat in a valley surrounded by ponderosa pine forest, with a creek running along the eastern boundary and hiking trails winding up into the hills. Beautiful area, isolated. The nearest town was about 20 miles away, perfect for getting kids off their phones and into nature. First week of the first session went great. The kids adjusted well, no major incidents, typical summer camp stuff, swimming in the lake, archery lessons, campfire songs. I was actually enjoying myself, thinking this would be the easiest job I'd ever had. Second week, things started feeling off. It started on Monday night. I was doing a final head count before lights out, making sure all 8 of my kids were in their bunks, when one of them, a kid named Tyler, asked me a strange question. Why was my mom here today? I looked up from my clipboard. Your mom wasn't here, buddy. Visiting day isn't until next session, but I saw her during free time. She was standing by the trees near the soccer field, waving at me. Another kid, James, sat up in his bunk. I saw my dad too. He was in the same spot, just standing there. Now I was paying attention. You both saw your parents? At the same time? They nodded. Tyler said, my mom was wearing her blue jacket, the one she always wears. She was smiling. My dad had his Broncos cap on, James added. He was just standing there watching us play. A third kid, Aiden, spoke up quietly. I saw my mom too, but she looked weird. Weird how? I asked. Aiden struggled to find the words, like she was too far away to see her face good, but I knew it was her. But she didn't move right. She just kind of stood there, really still, and when she waved, it was like slow, too slow. Brian caught my eye from across the cabin. He'd been listening to the whole conversation, and I could see the concern on his face. Guys, I said, trying to keep my voice light, I think maybe you saw some other campers' parents who came early, or maybe some hikers passing through, but your parents definitely weren't here. We'd have them sign in at the office. But it looked exactly like my mom, Tyler insisted. I almost went over to say hi, but then the counselor called us for dinner, and when I looked back, she was gone. Same with my dad, James said. He was there, then he wasn't. I told them it was probably just a case of mistaken identity, that they were missing home and their minds were playing tricks. They seemed to accept that, and after a few more minutes of reassurance, they settled down for sleep. I didn't believe my own explanation. After the kids were asleep, Brian and I sat on the cabin porch, speaking in low voices. "That's really weird, right?" Brian said. "Three kids seeing their parents in the exact same spot during the same time period?" "Yeah," I agreed. "Way too specific to be coincidence. Should we tell the camp director?" "And say what? Some kids think they saw their parents who weren't actually here?" "We don't have any proof." Brian leaned back against the cabin wall. "My cousin worked here about 5 years ago. He told me a story once. Said one summer a kid ran away from camp, said he was following his older brother into the woods. Thing is, his brother was away at college in California. They found the kid 2 miles out, completely lost, crying. He kept saying his brother had been calling to him, leading him deeper into the forest. A chill ran down my spine despite the warm night air. What happened? They brought him back, called his parents, they picked him up early. My cousin said the camp director acted like it wasn't the first time something like that had happened, but nobody talked about it officially. We sat in silence for a moment, listening to the crickets and the distant sound of the creek. And then I heard it. Footsteps, light, deliberate, walking around the perimeter of our cabin. Brian heard it too. He sat up straight, his hand instinctively going to the flashlight on his belt. "Hello? Somebody out there?" The footsteps stopped. We waited, barely breathing. Then, from the darkness beyond our porch, a voice. "Brian, is that you?" Brian's face went white. "Mom?" "Brian, honey, I came to see you. Come out here for a minute." I grabbed his arm as he started to stand. "Brian, your mom's not here. You know she's not here. But that's her voice," he whispered. "That's exactly her voice. Brian, come on, sweetheart. Don't make me wait." The voice was patient, gentle, exactly how you'd imagine a mother speaking to her son, but something about it was off. The pauses were too perfect, the inflection too precise, like someone reading from a script. "How does it know your name?" I hissed. Brian was staring into the darkness, his eyes wide. "I don't know. I don't." "Brian, I brought your favorite cookies, the ones with the chocolate chips." He turned to me, his face confused. "She does make those. How would anyone know that?" "Come out here and get 'em, honey. Don't be rude." I tightened my grip on his arm. "Don't. Whatever that is, it's not your mom." We sat there, frozen, as the voice called to Brian 3 more times, each time sounding a little less patient, a little more demanding. Then, finally, it stopped. We heard the footsteps again, slowly circling around to the back of the cabin, then fading into the distance. Neither of us slept that night. We sat on the porch until dawn, flashlights in hand, listening to every sound in the forest. When the sun finally came up and the other counselors started emerging from their cabins for morning duties, everything seemed normal again, like nothing had happened. At breakfast, I pulled aside Sarah, one of the senior counselors who'd been working at the camp for 3 years. I told her what the kids had said, what we'd heard during the night. She listened without interrupting, her expression growing more serious with each detail. "Come with me," she said when I finished. She led me to the camp director's office, a small building near the parking lot. The director, Mr. Harrison, was in his 60s, weathered face, kind eyes, looked like someone who'd spent his entire life working with kids. Sarah knocked, and he waved us in. "Tell him what you told me," Sarah said. I repeated the story. Mr. Harrison listened, nodding occasionally, his expression grave but not surprised. When I finished, he sighed and leaned back in his chair. "This happens every few years," he said quietly. "Usually once per summer, sometimes twice. Kids see their parents or siblings at the edge of the camp, right around dusk. Sometimes counselors hear family members calling to them at night." "What is it?" I asked. "I don't know what it is, but I know what it does." It mimics people the campers and staff care about, tries to lure them into the woods. We've had 3 kids follow these apparitions over the years. We found 2 of them within an hour, completely disoriented, couldn't remember why they'd left. The third, he paused. The third was missing for 6 hours. When we found him, he was hypothermic, in shock, kept saying his mother had led him in circles, that every time he tried to go back to camp, she'd appear ahead of him, telling him to follow. Jesus, I whispered. After that incident, we implemented a buddy system. No one goes anywhere alone, especially not near the forest boundary. During the weeks when these sightings happen, we double counselors on night duty and keep the kids closer to the center of camp. He looked at me seriously. If you see a family member you know isn't here, if you hear them calling to you, you ignore it. You go directly to another counselor. You report it immediately. And you do not, under any circumstances, follow them into those woods. But what is it? I asked again. How does it know these things about us? Mr. Harrison shook his head. The old man who owned this land before it became a camp, he told my predecessor that some parts of the forest have been sacred ground for hundreds of years. He said there are things that live in the old places, things that have learned to wear human shapes, use human voices. Said they're drawn to places where children gather because children are easier to fool, easier to lure away. Have you thought about shutting down the camp? Sarah asked. Every year, Mr. Harrison admitted. But these incidents are rare. Most summers, nothing happens at all. And the rest of the time, this is a safe place where kids make memories and grow. I won't let fear of something we barely understand destroy something good. He looked at both of us. You're both experienced counselors now. You know what to watch for. Keep your kids close. Don't let them wander near the boundaries alone. And if anyone reports seeing a family member who shouldn't be here, you come directly to me. Understood? We nodded. The rest of that session, I was constantly on edge. Every time we did activities near the tree line, I watched for figures standing in the shadows. Every night, I listened for footsteps and voices. The kids seemed fine, cheerful, engaged in camp activities, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching us from the forest. On the last night of the session, during our final campfire, one of the little girls from Cabin 3 stood up and pointed at the trees. Look, there's a person over there. Every counselor's head snapped in that direction. I saw it too. A figure, standing just inside the tree line, about 60 yards from our campfire circle. In the flickering light, I could see it was wearing what looked like a camp counselor uniform. It was standing perfectly still, watching us, too far away to see a face clearly, but close enough to see the shape of a person. Mr. Harrison stood up calmly. Everyone, let's move our campfire sing-along inside to the mess hall. Too many mosquitoes out here tonight. The kids groaned but obeyed, filing toward the mess hall with counselors herding them along. I stayed back with Mr. Harrison and 2 other senior counselors, watching the figure. Is it still there? Sarah asked. Yeah, I confirmed. It hasn't moved. They usually don't, Mr. Harrison said. They just watch, sometimes for hours. As we watched, the figure raised one arm, waving slowly, deliberately. The motion was hypnotic, rhythmic, and I felt a strange urge to walk toward it, to get closer, to see who it was. Don't look directly at it, Mr. Harrison said sharply. Eyes on me. All of you. We turned away from the figure, forming a tight group. The direct eye contact is what pulls you in, he explained. That's how they hook you. You stare, you get curious, you convince yourself you need to know what it is. Then you're walking toward it before you realize what you're doing. How do you know all this? I asked. I was a counselor here 30 years ago, he said quietly. I made the mistake of staring, walked halfway to the tree line before my co-counselor tackled me. I don't remember making the decision to walk. I just found myself moving. We kept our backs to the forest and walked to the mess hall. When I glanced back one last time, the figure was gone. The session ended the next morning. Parents arrived, picked up their kids. Everyone left happy and sunburned with bags full of camp, crafts, and memories. I helped clean the cabins, pack away equipment, prepare for the next session. I didn't sign up to work the remaining sessions that summer. I told Mr. Harrison I had a family emergency, that I needed to go home for a few weeks. He understood, didn't press for details. I think he knew. I made good money that summer, enough for textbooks and then some, but I earned every penny. I still have nightmares sometimes, dreams where I'm walking through dark woods, following a voice that sounds exactly like my mom, and no matter how far I walk, I never reach her. I wake up sweating, my heart racing, relieved to be in my dorm room and not lost in some dark forest. I'm graduating in December. Already have job interviews lined up for environmental science positions. Good jobs, important work, helping protect natural spaces. But I'll never work at a summer camp again. I'll never volunteer for outdoor education programs in isolated areas. And I'll never, ever trust a familiar voice calling to me from the darkness. If you work with kids in remote areas, if you supervise youth programs in forests or isolated camps, listen to me. Teach them never to follow voices calling from the woods. Teach them that if they see a parent or family member who shouldn't be there, they need to tell an adult immediately. Teach them to stay with groups, to never wander off alone, especially near tree lines and boundaries. Because some things in the forest have been there longer than our camps, longer than our trails, longer than our understanding, and they've learned how to use our love for each other against us. They've learned that we'll follow the voices of people we trust. They've learned that children will run toward parents, that counselors will investigate when family calls. They've learned to exploit our instincts, our emotions, our bonds, and they're very, very patient. If this story made you think twice about those isolated summer camps, hit that like button and subscribe, because protecting the people in your care means knowing what dangers exist beyond the obvious ones. Stay vigilant out there, and remember, if you see a loved one who shouldn't be there, don't go to them. Bring everyone else away from the boundary, and let whatever it is standing in those trees fade back into the darkness where it belongs. The ranch hand. I grew up working cattle ranches in western New Mexico. Been doing it since I was 16. Hard work, long days, but honest living. You learn to read weather, track animals, fix fences, and handle yourself in situations most people never think about. I thought I'd seen everything the rangeland could throw at me. Drought, floods, predators, injured livestock. I was wrong. I found one of our calves dead near the north fence line, torn apart, but the tracks around it didn't match any predator I knew, and they led to the fence line, then just stopped, like whatever made them had jumped 30 feet straight up. Here's what happened. I was working for the Double R Ranch, about 40 miles northwest of Grants, right up against the Navajo Nation border. We ran about 300 head of cattle on maybe 8,000 acres of high desert scrubland. The owner, a man named Robert Sullivan, had been ranching that land for 30 years. His foreman, a guy named Pete, who I worked under, had been there almost as long. It was late October, getting into the cold season, and we were doing fence checks before winter, making sure all the barbed wire was tight, posts were solid, gates were working, standard maintenance. Pete sent me out to check the northern section, about 6 miles of fence line that bordered reservation land. I took one of the ranch ATVs, loaded with tools, spare wire, a rifle in case I ran into coyotes or a mountain lion. The northern section was remote, even by ranch standards. No roads, no structures, just rolling hills covered in chamisa and juniper. Cell service was non-existent. I started the fence check around 9 a.m. working my way west to east. The fence looked good, no breaks, no sagging. I stopped every quarter mile or so to check the posts, tighten any loose wire. By noon, I was about halfway through the section, and that's when I smelled it. Death. Unmistakable. Something dead and rotting nearby. I followed the smell to a small arroyo about 30 yards south of the fence. That's where I found the calf. It was one of ours, maybe 4 months old, Black Angus. But it wasn't just dead, it was destroyed, torn apart in ways that didn't make sense. The rib cage was crushed inward, like something had squeezed it. The legs were bent backward at impossible angles, and the head was twisted completely around, facing the wrong direction. But there was almost no blood. For that amount of damage, there should have been blood everywhere. Instead, just a few dried smears on the rocks. I crouched down, studying the scene, trying to figure out what had done this. Not a coyote. They don't have the strength to crush bone like that, and they'd have eaten more of the carcass. Not a mountain lion. Wrong attack pattern. And, again, not enough feeding. Not a bear. We didn't have bears this far south. That's when I noticed the tracks. They started near the calf and led north toward the fence. At first, they looked like human footprints, barefoot, adult-sized. But after 5 or 6 prints, they changed, became larger, more elongated, with claw marks at the front. Then they changed again, became something that looked like a large dog or coyote, but too big, the stride too long. I followed them to the fence line, my rifle now in my hands, safety off. The tracks went right up to the fence, and then nothing. They just stopped. No prints on the other side, no disturbed vegetation, no sign that anything had jumped or climbed over. Just tracks leading to the fence, then empty ground beyond. I looked up. The fence was 5 feet tall, barbed wire on top, maybe 6 feet total. Nothing could jump that without leaving some kind of mark, snagged hair, disturbed ground on the landing, something. But there was nothing. I stood there, staring at those tracks, a cold feeling settling in my stomach. This wasn't right. None of this was right. My radio crackled. Pete's voice, staticky but clear enough. "How's the fence looking?" I keyed the mic. "Fence is fine. But Pete, I found one of our calves dead, near marker 12. Something killed it, and I don't know what. Tracks are. They're weird." Silence for a moment. Then, describe weird. They start human, then change to something else. Lead right to the fence, then stop. Another long pause. Get back to the ranch. Now, leave the calf. Pete, I should at least document this for the livestock report. I said, leave it. Get on the ATV and come back. Don't stop. Don't investigate. Just drive. You copy? The urgency in his voice made my skin prickle. Copy. Heading back now. I climbed on the ATV, started the engine, and began driving back along the fence line. I kept looking over my shoulder, expecting to see something following me, but the landscape was empty, just scrub brush and scattered trees and the endless blue sky. About 2 miles from where I'd found the calf, I saw something near the fence, a person, standing perfectly still, watching me approach. I slowed down, squinting against the sun. It looked like a man, tall, wearing dark clothes. As I got closer, I could see he was barefoot, just standing there on the reservation side of the fence, maybe 10 feet back from the wire, watching me. I stopped the ATV about 50 yards away. Something told me not to get closer. "Hello?" I called out. The figure didn't respond, didn't move, just stood there. I noticed the proportions were off. The arms hung too low, almost to the knees. The legs seemed to bend backward slightly at the knee. like a dog's hind legs. And the face, I couldn't make out details at this distance, but something about it was wrong. You need help? I called, though every instinct was screaming at me to leave. The figure tilted its head, and I heard something, not words, exactly, more like a rasping sound, like air being pushed through a throat that wasn't shaped right. Then it smiled. I could see the smile clearly even at this distance, too wide, showing too many teeth. It raised one hand and waved at me, a slow, deliberate gesture. Come here. I put the ATV in gear and drove. Fast. Faster than I should have on that rough terrain, bouncing over rocks, the engine screaming. I didn't look back, didn't want to see if it was following, just focused on the path ahead, on getting back to the ranch buildings, to people, to safety. When I burst into the ranch yard, Pete was waiting outside the equipment barn. He took one look at my face and nodded. You saw it. Saw what? I demanded, my voice shaking. What the hell was that? Come inside. Mr. Sullivan needs to hear this. We went into the main house, where Robert Sullivan was sitting at his kitchen table with an older man I didn't recognize. The stranger was Navajo, maybe 70, with weathered skin and eyes that had seen too much. Pete introduced him as Daniel, a livestock inspector from the nation who'd been consulting on some missing cattle cases. I told them everything, the dead calf, the changing tracks, the figure at the fence. Daniel listened without interrupting, his expression grave. When I finished, he looked at Mr. Sullivan. It's on your land now, he said quietly. Crossed over in the last few days. That calf was a test, seeing if you'd notice, seeing how you'd react. What is it? I asked. Daniel looked at me for a long moment before answering. My people have a name for it, but speaking that name calls attention. What you need to know is it's a person who gave up their humanity for power. They can take animal shapes, mimic voices, move between forms. They hunt at night, usually, but this time of year, when the days get short, they can come here. Why is it here? Mr. Sullivan asked. Could be many reasons. Maybe it was driven out from somewhere else. Maybe it's hunting because food is scarce. Maybe it's just mean. Daniel paused. But it knows you're aware of it now. It knows you saw it. That matters. What do we do? Pete asked. You protect your livestock best you can. Bring the herd closer to the buildings. Keep lights on at night. Don't send anyone out alone, especially near the north fence. And if it tries to talk to you, if you hear voices calling from the dark, he looked at each of us in turn. Don't answer. Don't go to investigate. Stay inside until sunrise. How long will it stay? Mr. Sullivan asked. Until it finds easier hunting. Could be days, could be weeks. But it won't cross running water, and it doesn't like crowds. Keep your people together, keep your livestock protected, wait it out. That night, we moved the entire herd into the pastures closest to the ranch buildings, about 200 acres with good fencing and floodlights on posts. Mr. Sullivan hired 2 more hands temporarily so we could run patrols in pairs through the night. I was paired with Pete for the first night watch, midnight to 4 a.m. We drove the ranch truck slowly around the perimeter, checking fences, checking livestock, watching for anything unusual. Around 2 a.m., the truck's headlights caught something near the north pasture fence, the figure from earlier. Standing inside our fence line now, about 20 yards from a group of calves. It was facing away from us, toward the cattle, and I could see its back clearly. The spine was wrong, bumping up in places that didn't match human anatomy. The arms hung at its sides, fingers nearly touching the ground. Pete hit the horn. 3 long blasts. The figure's head snapped around, impossibly fast, like an owl. It looked at us with those same wrong proportions, and even in the headlights, its eyes reflected like an animal's. Yellow-green, glowing, and it dropped all 4s and ran, not human running, not animal running, something in between, covering ground faster than anything that size should move. It hit the fence line and leaped straight up, clearing the 5-foot fence by a good 6 feet, landing on the other side without breaking stride, and disappeared into the darkness. Jesus Christ, I whispered. Pete grabbed his radio. All hands converge on the north pasture. Move the calves to the central pen. Do it now. Within 20 minutes, we had every animal moved to the most secure area, closest to the buildings, with all the floodlights on. We didn't see the figure again that night, but we heard things. Scratching on metal, like claws on the barn roof, footsteps circling the buildings, and once, around 4 a.m., Pete's voice calling from the darkness beyond the lights. Hey, anyone got a spotlight? I need help out here. But Pete was standing right next to me. We both heard his voice calling. He keyed his radio to make sure everyone else heard him. This is Pete. I'm at the equipment barn with the new guy. Whatever you hear calling out there, it's not me. The voice in the darkness called again. Come on, guys. I can't see. Someone bring a light. We didn't respond. Didn't go to investigate. Just stayed in the light. Waited for dawn. This went on for 9 days. Every night, the figure would appear somewhere near the property. Sometimes at the fence, sometimes closer. Once on the roof of the hay barn. Every night, we'd hear voices. Ranch hands calling for help. Mr. Sullivan asking someone to check something. Once even Daniel's voice speaking in Navajo. We lost 2 more calves during those 9 days. Both killed the same way. Crushed. Twisted. Almost no blood. Both times the tracks led away toward the north, toward the reservation land. On the 10th day, Daniel came back. He walked the property line with Mr. Sullivan, spending particular time near the north fence. They were gone for about 3 hours. When they came back, Daniel said the presence had moved on. It got bored. He explained. You didn't give it what it wanted, didn't follow the voices, didn't send anyone alone into the dark, didn't make it easy, so it left to find easier prey. Will it come back? Mr. Sullivan asked. Maybe, but probably not this season. He showed it this is hard hunting, it'll remember that. Daniel gave us some advice before he left, and things to watch for, signs it might be returning, protocols to follow if it did. Then he said something that stuck with me. This thing, it's a hunter, but it's also a coward. It only goes after the weak, the isolated, the vulnerable. You show strength, you stay together, you respect the boundaries, it'll move on. But you show fear, you make mistakes, you separate from the group. That's when it strikes. I worked at the Double R for another year after that. We never saw the figure again, though sometimes at night, working late in the barn, I'd get that feeling of being watched, like something was out there in the darkness, just beyond the fence line, waiting to see if I'd make a mistake. I didn't. I followed the rules. Never went out alone after dark. Always stayed within sight of the buildings. Never answered voices calling from the distance. And eventually, that watched feeling faded. I'm working at a different ranch now, further east, away from the reservation borders. The work is the same. Cattle, fences, long days in the sun. But I'm more careful now. More aware. I've learned that some predators don't have 4 legs and fur. Some of them look almost human, sound almost human, act almost human, until they don't. If you work in remote areas, if you spend time on rangeland near old territories, near reservation borders, near places that people have walked for thousands of years, listen to me. Trust your livestock. If your cattle are spooked by something you can't see, they're spooked for a reason. If your dogs won't go somewhere, don't force them. Animals know things we don't. Never investigate alone at night. Ever. If something seems wrong, get another person. If you hear someone calling for help, Verify it's really them before you go running into darkness. And if you see tracks that change shape, that lead to a place and then just stop, that don't match any animal, get away from that area. Mark it, report it, but don't follow it. Because some things in the remote places, in the old territories, in the lands that belonged to others long before we built our fences and ran our cattle, some things are still there, still hunting, still testing to see who's weak enough, isolated enough, foolish enough to follow them into the dark. I wasn't, but I came close. And that's close enough to last me a lifetime. If this story made you reconsider working alone on remote rangeland, hit that subscribe button and drop a like, because the wilderness has dangers that don't show up in any ranch safety manual. Stay together out there, and remember, if the tracks don't make sense, don't follow them to find out why. The photographer. I'm a landscape photographer, freelance. Been doing it for about 6 years now. I sell prints online, license images to magazines and tourism boards, make a decent living chasing sunsets and storm clouds across the Southwest. It's solitary work, which suits me fine. You learn to be patient, to wait for the right light, to hike into remote areas where most people never go. I've spent countless nights alone in the wilderness with just my camera gear and a tent. Never had a problem, never felt unsafe, until last March. I was setting up for a long exposure shot of the Milky Way when I reviewed my last photo and saw someone standing in the frame behind me. But I was completely alone on that ridge. Let me back up and explain the whole situation. I had gotten a commission from a travel magazine to shoot the Bisty Badlands in northwestern New Mexico, one of those alien-looking landscapes with hoodoos and balanced rocks and petrified wood scattered everywhere. They wanted dramatic shots, golden hour, blue hour, night sky, the works. I'd scouted the area during the day, found some great compositions, and decided to camp out for 3 nights to get the full range of lighting conditions. The Bisty is BLM land, totally undeveloped, no facilities, no marked trails, just raw desert. You park at a small dirt lot and hike in. Most photographers do day trips, but I wanted the overnight shots. The kind of images you can only get when you're willing to stay through the darkness. First night went perfectly. I got some beautiful sunset shots, stayed up until about 2 a.m. shooting star trails, then slept in my tent until dawn. No issues, no weird feelings, just me and the landscape and the incredible silence of deep desert. Second day, I hiked further into the formations, maybe 4 miles from where I'd parked, looking for fresh compositions. I found this perfect spot on a ridge overlooking a valley of hoodoos with a clear view north toward the horizon. Perfect for Milky Way shots that night. I set up camp about 100 yards from the ridge, ate dinner, waited for the sun to go down. The sky was crystal clear, no moon, absolutely perfect conditions. By 10 p.m., the Milky Way was visible, this incredible band of light stretching across the sky. I set up my camera on the ridge, tripod locked down, camera settings dialed in, 30-second exposures, ISO 3200, wide open aperture. I had my headlamp on red light mode to preserve my night vision, and I was working mostly by feel and memory, checking the LCD screen between shots. I took maybe 20 shots over the course of an hour, adjusting composition slightly each time, trying different foreground elements. Around 11 p.m., I reviewed the last batch of images on my camera screen, just checking focus and exposure. That's when I saw it. In the photo I'd just taken, there was a figure standing about 30 feet behind where my camera was positioned, right at the edge of the frame. Tall, human-shaped, but the details were blurry, like they'd moved during the 30-second exposure. My blood went cold. I was alone on that ridge. I'd been alone for the past hour. I'd been looking through the viewfinder, watching the composition, and there'd been no one there. I spun around, my headlamp cutting through the darkness. Empty. Nothing but rocks and scrub brush, and the vast, empty desert stretching away into the night. I looked back at the camera screen, zoomed in on the figure. The shape was definitely human. 2 legs, 2 arms, a head, but something was wrong with the proportions. The arms seemed too long, and the way it was standing, the angle was off, like the joints bent wrong. I checked the previous images. The figure wasn't in any of them, just the last one, the one I'd taken maybe 2 minutes ago. My hands started shaking. I told myself it was a trick of the light, a weirdly shaped rock that looked like a person, my mind filling in patterns that weren't really there. But I knew that wasn't true. I'd been photographing landscapes for 6 years. I knew the difference between a rock and a person. I packed up my camera, moving fast, my hands fumbling with the tripod legs. Every few seconds, I'd sweep my headlamp across the area, looking for movement, for any sign of someone nearby. Nothing, just darkness and the sound of wind moving through the formations. I got back to my tent, crawled inside, zipped it shut. I know that's stupid, but a tent is just nylon. It's not protection against anything real, but it made me feel slightly safer, like I had a barrier between me and whatever was out there. I sat in my sleeping bag, my headlamp off now, listening. The silence of the desert at night is different from regular silence. It's heavier, thicker, like sound gets absorbed by all that empty space. But I could hear my own breathing, my own heartbeat, the rustle of my sleeping bag when I shifted position. And then I heard something else. Footsteps, light, careful, moving around my tent in a slow circle. I held my breath, listening. The footsteps were rhythmic, deliberate, like someone walking around examining something. They'd stop occasionally, pause for a few seconds, then continue. Around and around, maybe 10 feet from my tent. "Hello," I called out, my voice shaking. "Who's out there?" The footsteps stopped. Silence. Complete silence. Even the wind had died down. I waited, barely breathing, straining to hear anything. After maybe 2 minutes, I heard a voice. My voice. "Hello? Who's out there?" The exact same words, the exact same inflection, even the shake in my voice, like a recording played back. But it was coming from outside, from somewhere near where the footsteps had stopped. "Who's out there?" it repeated. I didn't answer, didn't make a sound. Every horror movie I'd ever seen was running through my head, every stupid decision people make when they should just stay put and wait. The voice changed. Now it sounded curious, amused. "Come see what I found. The light is perfect." Phrases I'd said earlier in the day when I was talking to myself while scouting compositions, thinking out loud like I always do when I'm working alone. But now those words were being repeated back to me in my voice from something outside my tent. "Come see. The light is perfect." I pulled my sleeping bag up over my head like a kid hiding from monsters. I'm not proud of that, but I didn't know what else to do. I couldn't run. I was 4 miles from my truck, in total darkness, in terrain I barely knew. I couldn't fight. I didn't even know what I was dealing with. I could only wait. The voice spoke again, but this time it wasn't mine. It was my mom's. "Honey, are you okay? Come out here and talk to me." My mom lives in Phoenix. She's never been to the Bisty Badlands, but that was her voice. Perfect replication. The exact way she talks when she's concerned about me. "I'm worried about you. Come on out so I can see you're alright." I bit down on my hand to keep from making noise, because part of me, some stupid, instinctive part, wanted to answer, wanted to believe my mom was somehow out there, checking on me. "Please, honey, I came all this way. Don't make me wait out here." The voice was patient, gentle, but there was something underneath it, something that felt wrong, predatory, like a trap disguised as concern. I stayed in my sleeping bag, silent, for what felt like hours. The voice kept trying different approaches, My mom's voice, my dad's voice, my best friend from college, my ex-girlfriend, all perfect replications, saying things that sounded reasonable, caring, designed to make me open the tent and come out. Around 3 a.m., I heard the footsteps again, moving away from the tent, heading back toward the ridge where I'd been photographing. I waited another 30 minutes, then carefully unzipped my tent flap and looked out. The landscape was empty, just moonless sky, starlight, and the dark shapes of the hoodoos rising from the desert floor. My camera gear was still on the ridge, right where I'd set it up. I didn't go get it, didn't even consider it. I broke camp in the dark, using my headlamp, shoving everything into my backpack without organizing it, just wanting to leave. It took me almost 3 hours to hike back to my truck in the darkness, following my GPS, constantly checking over my shoulder. When I finally reached my vehicle at sunrise, I threw my pack in the back and drove straight to Farmington, the nearest town with people and buildings and normal civilization. I got coffee at a McDonald's and just sat there for 2 hours, watching families with kids, workers on break, people living regular lives. I called the magazine editor and told them I couldn't complete the assignment, that I'd had equipment failures. They weren't happy. I lost that commission and probably burned a bridge professionally, but I didn't care. When I got home to Albuquerque, I looked at that photo again, the one with the figure in it. I'd been hoping it was a mistake, a smudge on the lens, anything explainable. But it was still there, a tall shape, humanish, standing right behind where I'd been working, arms too long, posture wrong. I zoomed in as far as the image would allow. The face was blurred from movement, but I could make out details, eyes that reflected the light wrong, a mouth that seemed too wide, features that were almost human, but not quite. I deleted that photo, deleted all the photos from that night, backed up, nothing, just wanted them gone. I talked to another photographer a few weeks later, a woman who'd been shooting in the Southwest for 20 years. I asked her casually if she'd ever experienced anything weird while camping in remote areas. She gave me this look, like she was deciding whether to answer honestly. "Bisty?" she asked. "Yeah," I admitted. "How'd you know?" "Because it happens there more than other places. I don't know why. Something about those formations, that specific piece of desert. Other photographers have told me about it. Voices in the dark, figures in photos that weren't there when you took the shot, feeling like you're being circled." "What is it?" I asked. She shrugged. "I don't know. Don't want to know. I shoot the Bisty during the day only, and I'm out before dusk. Whatever it is that wanders those formations at night, it's not interested in photography. It's interested in photographers. Has anyone ever stayed, tried to document it?" One guy did. Wildlife photographer, thought he could get footage of whatever it was. He set up trail cameras, spent 5 nights camping out there. She paused. He came back. Different. Wouldn't talk about what happened. Quit photography entirely. Moved to Seattle, last I heard. But his trail cameras? They were all found arranged in a circle, all pointing at his tent. Every single image on them was black, like something had covered the lenses. All except the last photo on each camera was on those. His tent, empty, door, open, taken from inside the tent, looking out. I stopped taking overnight shooting trips after that. I still do landscape photography, but now I'm strategic about it. I shoot during golden hour and blue hour, but I'm back in my truck before full darkness. I don't camp alone in remote areas anymore. If a shot requires overnight presence, I hire an assistant, someone to share the watch, to verify that what I'm seeing is real, and I avoid the Bisty Badlands completely. I don't care how beautiful it is, how perfect the light, how unique the formations. That landscape can keep its secrets. Because I learned something that night on that ridge, reviewing that photo with a figure that shouldn't have been there. Some places in the desert aren't empty, even when they look empty. Some places have things living in them that have learned to hide, to wait, to watch. Things that get curious about the people who come alone into the darkness with their cameras and their lights and their solitary focus. Things that like to play with voices, with shapes, with the edges of what we perceive and what we know is real. Things that stand just outside the frame, waiting to be noticed, waiting for you to turn around, waiting for you to come looking if you're a photographer, especially if you shoot landscapes in remote areas. Listen to what I'm telling you. Check your photos. Really check them. Look at the backgrounds, the edges of the frame, the places you weren't focusing on. If you see something that wasn't there when you took the shot, don't go back to that location at night. If you hear voices in the darkness, especially your own voice or the voices of people you know, don't answer. Don't engage. Stay in your vehicle or your tent. Wait for sunrise and leave. And if you're alone in the wilderness and you get that feeling of being watched, of being circled, of being studied like a specimen, trust it. Pack up. Leave. Don't wait for full darkness. Because some subjects aren't worth photographing. Some landscapes are beautiful specifically because they're dangerous. And some things in those landscapes have learned that photographers, with our obsessive focus on light and composition, make easy targets. We're looking through viewfinders, not at what's standing behind us. We're focused on the shot, not on the footsteps approaching. We're alone, by choice, in places where no one will hear us call for help. Perfect prey. If this story made you reconsider solo photography trips in remote areas, hit that subscribe button and drop a like, because there are places where the best shot isn't worth what might be waiting to get in the frame with you. Stay aware out there, and remember, sometimes the thing you're trying to capture is also trying to capture you. The breakdown. My car broke down on a dirt road 15 miles from the nearest town, and while I was looking under the hood, I heard someone offer to help, but when I looked up, there was nobody there. Just empty road in both directions. Let me explain how I ended up in that situation. The cabin I'd rented was outside a tiny place called Fence Lake, population maybe 40 people, halfway between Albuquerque and the Arizona border. The cabin sat on about 20 acres of high desert scrubland, solar panels for power, satellite internet, the whole off-grid setup, perfect for someone who needed quiet and focus. I'd been working on a database architecture project, lots of late nights coding, video calls with my team in California, standard remote work stuff. The isolation was actually great for productivity. No distractions, no traffic noise, just me and my laptop and the sound of wind due to junipers. On the 15th day, I needed supplies. The cabin had basics, but I was running low on coffee and actual food. The nearest real grocery store was in Quemado, about 35 miles away. I loaded up my car, a 10-year-old Honda Civic that had always been reliable, and headed out around 2 p.m. The drive to Quemado was uneventful. I got my groceries, filled up on gas, grabbed lunch at the only restaurant in town, started heading back around 4:30, giving myself plenty of time to get home before dark. I was about 20 miles from the cabin on this empty dirt road that cuts through BLM land when the car started making a noise, a grinding sound from under the hood, getting louder. Then steam started pouring out from under the edges. I pulled over, put on my hazards even though I hadn't seen another car in 30 minutes, and popped the hood. Steam billowed out, and I waited for it to clear before looking inside. I'm not a car person, don't know much beyond checking oil and adding washer fluid, but even I could see the problem. The radiator hose had split, coolant was everywhere, dripping onto the ground, the engine was overheated, and I was stranded. I pulled out my phone, no signal. Not surprising out here, but still frustrating. I looked up and down the road, Empty in both directions, just desert scrub and distant mesas and the setting sun starting to turn the sky orange. I had maybe 2 hours of daylight left. The cabin was 15 miles away, too far to walk before dark, especially carrying groceries. Colmado was 20 miles back. My best option was to wait for another vehicle to pass, flag them down, ask for a ride, or at least call a tow truck when they got to a place with service. So I waited, sat on the hood of my car, watching the road, watching the sun get lower. 30 minutes passed. No vehicles. The temperature started dropping. High desert gets cold fast once the sun goes down. That's when I heard the voice. Need some help with that? Male voice. Friendly. Casual. Like someone walking up to a neighbor's broken lawnmower. I looked up, expecting to see someone approaching from a vehicle I'd somehow missed, but the road was empty. Both directions, as far as I could see, completely empty. No car, no truck, no person. Hello? I called out. No response. Just whined and the ticking of my cooling engine. I told myself I'd imagined it. Stress, isolation, the weirdness of being stranded in the middle of nowhere. My mind filling in sounds that weren't there. I pulled out my phone again, checking for signal even though I knew it was pointless. Still nothing. I opened my email app anyway, hoping maybe I could queue up a message that would send once I got back to civilization, let someone know I was stranded. That won't work out here. The same voice, closer now, like someone standing right next to my car. But when I looked, there was nobody. I spun around, checking all sides of the vehicle. Empty road, empty desert, just me. My heart started pounding. Who's there? This isn't funny. Silence. Then, from the direction of the desert scrub, about 20 feet away, I heard movement. Footsteps. Slow and deliberate. Crunching on dry vegetation. I stared at the spot where the sound was coming from. I could see the bushes moving slightly. Something pushing through them, but I couldn't see what. The movement was low to the ground at first, then higher, like something standing up. I can help you with the car, the voice said, and now it was coming from behind me. I spun around, still nobody, but I heard breathing, close enough that I should have been able to see whoever was making that sound. Show yourself, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I don't know what kind of game this is, but... Not a game, the voice interrupted. Different tone now, less friendly, colder. Your car is broken. It's getting dark. You need help. Then show yourself and help me, I said. Can't do that. Not yet. Not until you invite me. The way it said invite me made my skin crawl. There was something hungry in those words. Something anticipating. I backed up against my car, putting the vehicle between me and whatever this was. My mind was racing, trying to find a rational explanation. Someone playing a prank with speakers, a weird acoustic effect. Heat exhaustion making me hallucinate, but I knew. Deep down, I knew this wasn't any of those things. The sun was lower now, maybe 45 minutes from full dark. The shadows were getting longer, and the temperature had dropped at least 10 degrees. I could see my breath. Tell me to help you, the voice said, patient now, almost coaxing. Just say yes. Help me, and I will. Every instinct was screaming not to say those words, not to give permission, not to invite whatever this was to do anything. No, I said firmly. I don't need your help. Silence. Long enough that I thought maybe it had left, given up, moved on. Then I saw it. At first, it looked like a person walking along the road from the direction of Kimado. A tall figure, maybe a hiker, getting closer. I felt a wave of relief. Another person. Someone real. Someone who could actually help. But as the figure got closer, the relief turned to dread. The walk was wrong. Too smooth. like it was gliding instead of stepping. The proportions were off. Arms too long, legs bending at angles that didn't match human joints, and as it got within 50 yards, I could see the face clearly in the fading sunlight. It had no features, just a smooth expanse where a face should be, like someone wearing a flesh-colored mask with nothing on it. The figure stopped about 30 feet from my car. It stood there, perfectly still, and then its head tilted sideways. Too far, at least 90 degrees. Like an owl. "Say yes," it said, and the voice came from that smooth, featureless face. "Say yes, and I'll fix everything." I couldn't move, couldn't speak, just stood there, frozen, staring at this thing that looked almost human but wasn't. Then I heard an engine, real engine noise, coming from the direction of the cabin. I tore my eyes away from the figure and saw headlights in the distance, getting closer. A pickup truck, moving fast, raising a plume of dust. The figure turned toward the approaching vehicle, its head swiveling unnaturally. Then it stepped off the road and into the desert scrub, moving with that same gliding walk, and disappeared behind a cluster of junipers. The pickup pulled up next to my car and stopped. An older man got out, maybe 60, wearing ranch clothes and a Stetson. He looked at my car, at me, then at the desert where the figure had disappeared. "You okay, son?" he asked. I nodded, not trusting my voice yet. "Radiator hose." He walked around to look under my hood. "Yeah, that's blown. You're not going anywhere in this." There was. I started, then stopped. How do you explain what I'd just seen? The rancher looked at me more carefully. There was someone here, wasn't there? Someone who wasn't right. I nodded again. He sighed, took off his hat, wiped his forehead. "You tell it yes? You give it permission to help?" "No." I said no. "Good." He put his hat back on. "That's good. Get your stuff. I'll give you a ride back to your cabin. We'll deal with the car tomorrow, in daylight, with more people." I grabbed my laptop bag and the groceries that wouldn't spoil. The rancher helped me load everything into his truck bed. As we were getting in the cab, I asked him what that thing was. He looked at me for a long moment. "You're not from around here. Seattle, originally. I'm renting the Peterson cabin for a month. City boy then." He started the truck, did a 3-point turn to head back toward the cabin. "What you saw, we don't talk about it directly. Bad luck to name it. But it's been in this area longer than the roads, longer than the ranches, longer than probably the pueblos. It hunts. Hunts what? People who are alone, vulnerable, lost, broken down." He glanced at me. "It can't hurt you directly, not unless you give it permission. But it can sound like anyone, look like almost anyone, and it's very patient. It'll spend hours trying to get you to say yes, to invite it, to let it help. What happens if you say yes? Happens. Don't know exactly. People who say yes don't come back to tell us." He drove in silence for a moment. "But we find evidence sometimes. Clothes, scattered belongings, tracks that lead into the desert, and then change, stop being human, tracks." We reached my cabin about 20 minutes later. The rancher helped me unload, then gave me his card. His name was William. He had a ranch about 8 miles north, and he said he'd come by in the morning with a tow truck to deal with my car. "One more thing," he said before he left. "You're out here alone, right? No roommate, no partner?" "Yeah, it's just me." He frowned. "Might want to cut your stay short. Go back to the city early. That thing knows where you live now. Knows you're alone. It'll come by, test you, see if you'll give permission the next time." "Next time?" My voice cracked. "It doesn't give up easy. You're marked now. It'll come around at night, probably. You'll hear voices, see things, get tempted to open your door or go outside. Don't. Stay inside. Keep the lights on. Wait for morning." He drove away. and I went inside my cabin. I locked every door, every window, turned on every light, sat at my desk with my laptop, trying to work, trying to act normal. Around midnight, I heard knocking, soft, polite knocking on my front door. "Hey man, it's me. Let me in. I'm freezing out here." My roommate's voice. My roommate from Seattle, who I had lived with for 2 years before going remote. Perfect replication, right down to the slight Boston accent he had. But my roommate was in Seattle, 2 states away. He had no idea where this cabin even was. "Nice try," I said to the door. "You're not him." The knocking stopped. Silence for maybe 30 seconds. Then my mom's voice. "Honey, are you okay in there? I'm worried about you. Please open the door." I put on headphones, turned up music, tried to drown out the voices, but I could still hear them between songs during quiet moments. Friends, family, co-workers, all of them asking to be let in, all of them sounding concerned, caring, real. It went on until sunrise. When the sun came up, the voices stopped, and I heard footsteps walking away from the cabin, crunching on gravel, fading into the distance. I called my landlord that morning, told him I had a family emergency, needed to break my lease early. He was understanding. William came by with a tow truck around 10 a.m., and we got my car to a shop in Quemato, blown radiator hose, like he'd said, fixed by that afternoon. I packed up my stuff, loaded my car, drove straight back to Albuquerque, didn't stop except for gas, got back to the city, and felt like I could breathe again. Buildings, traffic, people, noise, light, civilization. I thought I wanted isolation and quiet. I was wrong. I still work remote, but now I do it from my apartment in the city, or from coffee shops, or from co-working spaces, places with people, places with noise, places where if something tries to get my attention, I can verify it's real. I don't take solo trips into rural areas anymore. I don't rent isolated cabins, and I always make sure my car is in perfect condition before I drive anywhere remote. Because I learned something on that empty dirt road, waiting for help that I knew I couldn't accept. Some offers of help aren't help at all. Some friendly voices don't come from friendly sources. And some things in the remote places, the empty places, the lonely places, they've learned exactly what to say to make you open the door, to make you accept assistance, to make you give permission. But they can't do anything until you say yes, until you invite them in, until you accept their help. If you break down in a remote area, if you find yourself alone and vulnerable and someone offers to help but won't show themselves, don't say yes, don't give permission, don't accept. Wait for help that comes with a visible face, a real vehicle, a verifiable identity. Wait for help that doesn't ask for permission before giving it. And if you're alone in an isolated place and you hear voices of people you know, people who shouldn't be there, people who want to be let in or want you to come out, don't listen. Stay inside. Stay in the light. Wait for sunrise. Because some things can't come in without an invitation, and that's the only thing keeping them out. If this story made you reconsider that remote cabin rental, hit that subscribe button and drop a like, because isolation isn't always peaceful, and quiet isn't always safe. Stay connected out there, and remember, never say yes to help you can't see. The Night Hike. I'm an EMT, been doing it for about 5 years now, working 12-hour shifts in Santa Fe. It's stressful work, long hours, heavy emotional toll. To decompress, I hike a lot. Sometimes after a particularly rough shift, I'll drive out to the national forest and just walk for hours, clearing my head, processing what I've seen. Usually, I hike during the day. But one night, last October, After a shift that went sideways in every possible way, I needed to walk it off immediately. I was 2 miles into the trail when I realized someone was hiking behind me, matching my pace exactly. But when I stopped to let them pass, they stopped too, and when I turned around with my headlamp, the trail behind me was completely empty. Let me back up and explain what led to this. This shift had been brutal. We'd lost a patient, a kid, 12 years old, hit by a car. We'd done everything right, followed every protocol. But sometimes that's not enough. By the time my shift ended at 7 p.m., I was wrecked, angry, sad, exhausted, all of it. My partner could see it, told me to go home, take a few days off, talk to someone, but I couldn't go home. Couldn't sit in my apartment with those images in my head. I needed to move, needed to burn off the adrenaline and grief and frustration. So I drove to the Santa Fe National Forest, to a trailhead I'd used dozens of times before, a moderate 5-mile loop that usually took me about 2 hours. I got there around 8 p.m. The parking lot was empty, which wasn't surprising for a weeknight in October. The sun had set about 30 minutes earlier, and I had maybe 20 minutes of twilight left. A smart decision would have been to wait until morning, but I wasn't thinking smart. I was thinking about a dead kid and how badly I needed to not think about him. I grabbed my pack, my headlamp, my phone, and started hiking. The trail was well marked, I knew it well, and I had good gear. I told myself it would be fine. Just 2 hours, then back to the car, then home. The first mile was in twilight, that gray period where you can still see pretty well without artificial light. The trail climbed gradually through ponderosa pine forest, switchbacking up the side of a ridge. I walked fast, almost jogging in places, my boots pounding on the packed dirt, my breath coming hard. It helped. The physical exertion, the focus on where to put my feet, the clean smell of pine, it was helping push away the images from earlier. By the time I hit the 1-mile marker, full darkness had fallen. I clicked on my headlamp, the bright LED beam cutting through the trees. The forest looked different at night. The trees seemed taller, closer together, the shadows deeper. But I'd hiked in the dark before, had done plenty of night shifts in the woods, doing search and rescue training. Darkness didn't scare me. I kept walking, maintaining a good pace, my headlamp beam bouncing with each step. The trail continued climbing, and I was breathing hard now, sweating despite the cold October air. That's when I heard it. Footsteps behind me. Another hiker, moving at about the same pace I was, their boots crunching on the trail maybe 30 yards back. I felt a wave of relief. I wasn't alone out here. Someone else had decided to do a night hike, probably for similar reasons. Stress relief, clearing their head, enjoying the solitude. It was good to have another person on the trail. Safer. I kept walking, and the footsteps kept pace. Not getting closer, not falling behind, just maintaining that same distance. After about 5 minutes, I started to feel a little weird about it. Usually, on narrow trails, faster hikers will call out, passing on your left or something, and slower hikers will step aside. But this person wasn't trying to pass, just following at the exact same speed. I slowed down slightly, expecting them to catch up. The footsteps behind me slowed too, maintaining that same 30-yard distance. I stopped completely, stepping to the side of the trail, turning halfway around. "Go ahead and pass," I called out. "I'm taking a break." The footsteps stopped. I stood there, my headlamp pointed down the trail, waiting to see the glow of their headlamp coming around the last curve. But I didn't see any light. The trail behind me was completely dark. "Hello?" I called. No response. Just the sound of wind in the pines and my own breathing. This was weird. If they'd stopped for their own break, I should still see their light. If they'd turned off their light for some reason, they should have said something. Nobody hikes in complete darkness on a trail this technical. I waited for maybe a minute, listening. No sound of movement, no light, nothing. I turned back around and kept hiking, faster now, my unease growing. Maybe they'd gone off the trail to pee or something. Maybe they were taking a break in the woods. Reasonable explanations. But after about 30 seconds, I heard the footsteps again. Same distance behind me. Same pace. My heart rate picked up, and not from the exertion this time. Something was wrong. I could feel it. That instinct that had kept me alive through 5 years of emergency medicine. That sixth sense that tells you when a situation is about to go bad. I stopped again, spun around quickly, my headlamp cutting through the darkness, illuminating the trail behind me. Empty. No person, no light, nothing but the trail and the trees and the shadows between them. But I'd heard footsteps. I knew I had. You can't mistake the sound of boots on a dirt trail, the rhythm of human walking. "This isn't funny," I yelled into the darkness. "Who's there?" The forest swallowed my words. Then, from somewhere in the trees off to my left, I heard a voice. My voice. "This isn't funny. Who's there?" Exact same words. Exact same tone. Even the slight tremor of fear that had been in my voice. My blood went cold. I stood there, frozen, my headlamp beam shaking as my hand trembled. This wasn't another hiker. This wasn't someone playing a prank. This was something else, something wrong, something that could replicate my voice perfectly after hearing it once. I started backing up the trail, keeping my light pointed behind me, watching for movement. I'd hike the rest of the loop, get back to my car, get out of here. 2 miles to go. I could do 2 miles. I turned, started walking again, faster now, almost running on the uphill sections. Behind me, the footsteps resumed, closer now, maybe 20 yards back instead of 30. I didn't look, didn't stop, just kept moving, my legs burning, my lungs screaming, my pack bouncing painfully against my back. The footsteps got closer, 15 yards, 10 yards. I could hear breathing now, not human breathing, deeper, raspier, like air moving through a throat that wasn't shaped right. 5 yards. I broke into a full run, scrambling up the trail, my headlamp beam jerking wildly, throwing shadows everywhere. I could hear it behind me, matching my speed, not trying to catch me, but not letting me get away either, staying close, hurting me. The trail curved sharply to the right, wrapping around a large boulder. I took the turn too fast, my boot slipping on loose rocks, and I went down hard, sliding on the gravel, my hands scraping against the trail. I rolled onto my back, my headlamp now pointed up at the trees, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst. I fumbled for the light, trying to aim it back down the trail, see what had been following me. The beam found it, 10 feet away, standing in the middle of the trail. It was shaped like a person. 2 legs, 2 arms, a head, but everything about it was wrong. The legs bent backward at the knee, like a dog's hind legs. The arms were too long, hanging past where its knees would be if the knees bent the right direction. And the head was tilted at an angle that would break a human neck, turned almost completely around, looking at me, upside down. The face was the worst part. It looked almost human, but the features were slightly off, like someone had described a human face to an artist who'd never seen one. The eyes were too large, spaced too far apart. The mouth was too wide, extending past where the cheeks should end, and it was smiling. This horrible, too wide smile that showed too many teeth. "Are you okay?" it said, in a perfect imitation of my voice. "Do you need help?" I scrambled backward, my hands and boots slipping on the rocky trail, trying to put distance between us. It took a step toward me, and I heard bones cracking, joints popping, like its body was rearranging itself with each movement. "I'm an EMT," it said, still in my voice. I can help you. That was a bad fall. My hand found a rock, about the size of a baseball. Without thinking, I threw it as hard as I could. The rock hit the thing square in the chest, and it made a sound. Not a cry of pain, more like a hiss of annoyance. It looked down at where the rock had hit, then back up at me, that smile never changing. That wasn't very nice, it said. I'm trying to help. I got my feet under me, still backing away, my headlamp beam shaking so badly I could barely see. The thing took another step forward, its movement smooth, now fluid, like it had figured out how to work the body it was wearing. Then I heard something that made me want to cry with relief. Voices. Real voices. Multiple people. Talking and laughing. Coming up the trail from behind me. A group of hikers. Probably doing the same loop. Probably wondering why there was a crazy person sitting in the middle of the trail shining a light at nothing. I turned my head slightly, keeping the thing in my peripheral vision. I could see headlamp beams bouncing through the trees, getting closer. Maybe a dozen lights. Looked like a guided night hike group. When I looked back, the thing was gone. Just empty trail, like it had never been there. The group came around the bend, and I saw they were college students, led by two guides with Forest Service patches on their jackets. One of the guides, a woman in her 30s, saw me and hurried over. Hey, are you alright? Did you fall? I looked down at myself. My hands were scraped and bleeding. My pants were torn at the knee. My pack was half off my shoulder. I must have looked like I'd tumbled down the mountain. Yeah, I managed. Yeah, I fell. I'm okay. You're hiking alone? The other guide asked, concerned. At night? Bad decision, I admitted. Really bad decision. They helped me up, checked my scrapes, made sure I wasn't seriously injured. The female guide offered to walk back with me to the trailhead, said the group could manage without her for a bit. I accepted gratefully. As we walked down the trail together, my legs shaking with adrenaline crash, she asked me what I'd been looking at when they came around the bend. I thought I saw an animal. I lied. On the trail, but it ran off when I heard your group coming. She nodded, but something in her expression said she didn't quite believe me. What kind of animal? I don't know. It was big, maybe a bear, but it moved wrong. I couldn't really see it clearly. She was quiet for a moment, then said, We brief all our night hike groups before we go out. Tell them to stay together. Don't wander off. Don't follow voices in the woods that sound like people they know. And if they see something that looks almost human but isn't quite right, don't approach it. Just get back to the group, and we leave immediately. Does that happen often? I asked. Often enough that we have protocols for it. She looked at me seriously. You're an EMT, right? I saw your badge on your pack. So you deal with emergencies. You stay calm under pressure. But out here at night, alone, different rules apply. Things hunt these forests that know how to take advantage of people who are isolated, stressed, vulnerable. What kind of things? She shook her head. Don't know the name, don't want to know, but they've been here longer than the trails, longer than the Park Service, longer than probably the native peoples who lived here first. And they're patient. They'll follow you for miles, testing you, seeing if you'll engage with them, if you'll respond to their calls, if you'll let them get close enough to what? I asked. Don't know. Nobody who gets that close comes back to tell us. We reached the trailhead about 45 minutes later. My car was still the only one in the lot, which meant the thing had followed me from the very beginning, probably watching me from the trees as I geared up and started hiking. The guide waited until I was in my car, the engine running, before she headed back up the trail. Before she left, she gave me one more piece of advice. If you need to decompress after rough shifts, find a gym, find a therapist, Find a busy trail during the day with lots of people, but don't come out here alone at night. Whatever you're trying to process, whatever you're trying to work through, it's not worth what might find you in the dark. I took her advice. I found a therapist who specializes in first responder trauma. I joined a gym. I still hike, but only during daylight hours and never alone. And I've learned to deal with the bad shifts in healthier ways, ways that don't involve putting myself in vulnerable situations in isolated places. Because I learned something on that trail, with something that wasn't human matching my footsteps in the darkness. The things we carry from our work, from our trauma, from our stress, they make us vulnerable. They cloud our judgment. They push us to make bad decisions, to seek isolation when we should seek connection, to go into darkness when we should stay in light. And there are things out there that can sense that vulnerability, that can smell the grief and pain and exhaustion coming off us like blood in the water, that know exactly when to approach, what to say, how to seem helpful when they're anything but. If you work in emergency services, if you deal with trauma regularly, if you find yourself needing to escape after difficult shifts, please don't do what I did. Don't go into isolated places alone, especially at night. Don't make yourself an easy target for things that hunt people at their lowest moments. Find healthy ways to decompress. Find people to talk to. Find safe places to process what you've seen and felt, because the darkness isn't empty. And some things in that darkness have learned to recognize the walking wounded, people who are running from their own pain, the ones who just want to be alone with their thoughts for a while. Those are the easy ones, the vulnerable ones, the ones who don't see the danger until it's following their footsteps, matching their pace, wearing a smile that's almost human but not quite. I was lucky. I had a group of hikers come around that bend at exactly the right moment. Not everyone gets that lucky. If this story made you reconsider solo night hikes after rough days, hit that subscribe button and drop a like, because taking care of yourself means making smart choices about when and where you're vulnerable. Stay safe out there. Process your trauma in the light, surrounded by people who care. And remember, the darkness can wait. Whatever's in there will always be there. But you don't have to go meet it alone. Thanks for listening to these stories. If they've made you more aware, more cautious, more prepared, then maybe they've served their purpose. Stay safe, stay smart, and I'll see you in the next one.